My wife yelled, "Apologize to my brother or get out of my house," after her brother humiliated me at the family dinner. Everyone watched as I stood up, calmly walked over and faced him. He smirked, certain I'd beg, but I didn't. I looked him straight in the eyes and spoke one sentence. The room fell silent, and minutes later, their perfect life collapsed. True story, the chandeliers above us hummed with that specific frequency only expensive fixtures make. A sound so subtle you don't notice it until everything else goes quiet. And that night in my wife's family home, everything did go quiet. Let me back up. My name is Daniel Cross, and for 7 years, I've been married to Catherine Whitmore. Notice I say Whitmore, not Cross. That detail matters more than you'd think. Catherine never took my name. Her family wouldn't have allowed it. The Whitmores didn't adopt surnames, they bestowed them, or so her father used to joke. Except he wasn't really joking. The Whitmore estate sat on 12 acres in Montecito, California, a sprawling Mediterranean revival that had been in the family since the 1950s. Old money, the kind that whispers instead of shouts. Catherine's grandfather had made his fortune in shipping and real estate. Her father had tripled it through strategic investments. And her brother Marcus, well, Marcus had done what all golden children do. He'd been born, and that seemed to be enough. I came from Pittsburgh. My father was a machinist. My mother cleaned houses, including, ironically, a house 3 streets down from where I now sat at this mahogany dinner table that probably cost more than my childhood home. You'd think that would make me the protagonist of some inspiring rags to riches story. It didn't. It made me the man who married above his station, at least in the eyes of everyone in that dining room. The dinner had been Catherine's idea. Family time, she'd called it. We hadn't gathered like this in months, not since her father's birthday last spring. Marcus had been traveling, always traveling, doing whatever it was that Marcus did. Private equity, venture capital, consulting. The kind of work that sounds important, but remains deliberately vague. I'd spent the week before the dinner working late. I'm an architect, and we'd just landed a municipal contract to redesign the downtown library. It was the kind of project that actually meant something to me. Public space, accessible to everyone, built to last. The pay was modest compared to the private residential work I usually took, but the fulfillment was immeasurable. Catherine hadn't understood. It's a library, Daniel. How much creative freedom can there really be with cinder blocks and fluorescent lighting? I'd let it slide. You learn to let things slide when you marry into a family like the Whitmores. The dinner started pleasantly enough. Catherine's mother, Vivian, floated around the table in a cream-colored dress that probably cost what I made in a month, ensuring everyone's wine glass stayed perpetually half full. Her father, Richard, held court at the head of the table, telling stories from his golf club, each anecdote carefully crafted to seem self-deprecating while actually highlighting how connected, how influential, how essential he was to the community. Marcus arrived late, as he always did. Lateness was a power move in his world. It said, "My time is more valuable than yours." He swept in wearing what I'd come to recognize as his uniform, tailored Italian suit, no tie, top button undone, the studied casualness of someone who'd paid a consultant to teach him how to appear effortlessly superior. His cologne reached the table before he did. "The prodigal son returns," Richard boomed, standing to embrace Marcus. Catherine lit up in a way she rarely did anymore around me. Her whole body turned toward her brother, magnetized. "We were starting to think you'd forgotten about us." "Never," Marcus said smoothly, kissing his mother's cheek, squeezing his sister's shoulder. His eyes slid past me with the disinterest you'd show a piece of furniture. Traffic from the city was murder. He'd been in Los Angeles. 2 hours away. He'd left late on purpose. We settled into the meal. The first course was a roasted beet salad with goat cheese and candied walnuts, plated with the precision of a still life painting. I'd learned not to comment on the food anymore. Early in our marriage, I'd made the mistake of praising a dish too enthusiastically. "Daniel appreciates it so much because he grew up on casseroles," Catherine had explained to her mother, smiling as if she'd said something kind. The conversation flowed around topics I knew to navigate carefully: the state of the stock market, someone's yacht club drama, the impossible incompetence of contractors at the family's vacation home in Cabo. I contributed when spoken to, laughed at Richard's jokes, and refilled water glasses when I noticed them getting low. Then Marcus turned his attention to me. "So Daniel," he said, swirling wine in his glass, "Catherine mentioned you took on some public project. A library, was it?" The table's energy shifted. I felt it the way you feel barometric pressure drop before a storm. "That's right," I said, "the downtown branch. It's a complete redesign. We're preserving the historic facade, but modernizing the interior, adding community spaces, a digital learning center." "How civic-minded," Marcus interrupted. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "What's something like that pay these days?" Catherine touched my hand under the table. A warning. "It's not about the money," I said carefully. "It's about creating something that serves right, the noble pursuits." Marcus took a long sip of wine. "Must be nice to work on passion projects when you have someone else paying the mortgage." The silence that followed had texture. Vivian suddenly became very interested in her salad. Richard cleared his throat. Catherine's hand slipped away from mine. "I contribute to our household," I said, keeping my voice level. "Of course you do," Marcus said. "I didn't mean to suggest otherwise. It's just, well, we all know Catherine's trust fund is the real breadwinner in your marriage, right? No shame in that. Not every man has the resourcefulness to marry well." My jaw tightened. "I married Catherine because I love her." "Did you?" Marcus leaned back in his chair, studying me like I was something under glass. "Or did you love the idea of her? The package deal? The lifestyle upgrade?" "Marcus," Vivian said softly, not chastising, just acknowledgement that he'd said the quiet part loud. "I'm not judging," Marcus continued, and I knew with absolute certainty that he was. "Hell, if I were in your shoes, I'd have done the same thing. Blue-collar kid from Pittsburgh meets a Whitmore daughter? That's not love, that's lottery." I set down my fork very carefully. If I'd been holding it any tighter, it would have bent. Catherine was looking at her plate, not at me, not at her brother, at her untouched beet salad, as if the arrangement of arugula required intense study. "You don't know anything about our relationship," I said. "Don't I?" Marcus grinned. "Let me guess. You met at some charity function Catherine was obligated to attend. You saw an opportunity. You were charming, self-deprecating, played up the whole diamond in the rough thing. You made her feel like she was being rebellious by dating someone so accessible." Each word was a scalpel. "And she fell for it," Marcus went on, "because Catherine has always had a savior complex. Remember the three-legged dog, Cat? The one you begged Dad to let you keep?" Catherine flinched. "What was its name?" Marcus snapped his fingers. "Lucky. You called it Lucky even though it clearly wasn't. You kept it for 3 months before it bit you, and Dad had to have it put down." "That's enough," Richard said. But there was no force behind it. He looked almost amused. "I'm just saying," Marcus shrugged. "My sister has a pattern. She likes to rescue things. Broken things. It makes her feel needed." I pushed back from the table. Not standing, not yet, but the chair legs scraped against the hardwood floor with a sound like a drawn blade. "Sit down, Daniel," Catherine said quietly, the first words she'd spoken in minutes. "Not to defend me, to control me." "Yeah, Daniel," Marcus echoed. "Sit down. Don't be so sensitive. We're family here. We can be honest with each other, can't we?" "Honesty," I repeated. "Is that what you call this?" "What would you call it?" Marcus's eyes glittered. He was enjoying himself. This was sport to him. Fox hunting, but I was the fox. "I'd call it a man compensating for his own insecurities by belittling someone he thinks can't fight back." The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Marcus set down his wine glass with deliberate care. "Insecurities, that's a bold statement from a man living in a house my sister owns, driving a car my sister leases, wearing a watch my sister bought him for Christmas." "Marcus," Vivian tried again, but her heart wasn't in it. "No, Mom, I think we should clear the air." Marcus leaned forward. "Daniel seems to have some confusion about his position in this family. So let me clarify, you're not one of us. You will never be one of us. You're a charity case Catherine took pity on. And the only reason we tolerate you at this table is because she hasn't gotten bored yet, and traded you in for someone with an actual pedigree. I felt something crystallize in my chest, something cold and sharp and surprisingly calm. I looked at Catherine, really looked at her, waiting for her to say something, anything, to tell her brother to stop, to defend our marriage, to defend me. She met my eyes for half a second, then looked away. Well, Marcus spread his hands. Nothing to say? No comeback? I expected more fight from the man who convinced my sister to slum it. I stood up. Daniel, Catherine's voice carried a warning now. Don't make a scene. I'm not making a scene, I said. I'm leaving. You'll do no such thing. Catherine's face flushed. Sit down. Why? I asked simply. Because I'm telling you to. Her voice rose. Because this is my family, and you will not disrespect them by walking out of a family dinner because your feelings got hurt. My feelings, I repeated slowly. Your brother just called our marriage a con job, and you want me to sit here and take it because walking away would be disrespectful? He was joking, Daniel. God, you're so sensitive. This is how we talk to each other. If you can't handle some light teasing. Light teasing? I couldn't quite believe what I was hearing. Catherine, he said I married you for money. Didn't you? Marcus interjected. Partially, at least? Come on, be honest. I ignored him, kept my focus on my wife. Tell him he's wrong. Tell him I married you because I love you. Catherine's mouth opened, closed. Her eyes darted to her father, to her brother, back to me. The silence stretched. Catherine, I said, and I heard my voice crack despite my best efforts to keep it steady. Tell them. She stopped, started again. Of course you love me, Daniel, but Marcus has a point about I felt something inside me break, not shatter. Breaking implies violence, suddenness. This was more like ice calving from a glacier. Inevitable. Natural. The final result of long, slow pressures. Apologize to my brother, Catherine said suddenly, her voice sharp. You've been rude to him all night, glaring, making snide comments. I've barely spoken. Exactly. You've been sitting there silently judging, making everyone uncomfortable with your wounded puppy routine. She was on her feet now, too. Apologize to Marcus or get out of my house. My house. Not our house. Mine. The pronouns we use betray us. Everyone was watching. Vivian with her hand pressed to her collarbone. Richard with his eyebrows raised, mildly curious about how this would play out. Marcus with that smirk, that goddamn smirk that said he'd won before the game even started. I could feel the moment crystallizing, becoming the kind of story that gets told at future dinners. Remember when Daniel got so upset about nothing and stormed out? So dramatic. We really dodged a bullet when Catherine finally left him. Well, Catherine demanded, I'm waiting, apologize, or leave. I looked at her, 7 years. We'd been married 7 years. Together for 9. I'd proposed to her on a beach in Big Sur at sunset, and she'd cried and said yes, and I'd believed we were writing our own story, separate from her family, from expectations, from the weight of the Whitmore name. How naive I'd been. How deliberately naive, Charm. Because if I was honest, really honest, I'd seen the signs. The way she always paid for dinners and passed it off as no big deal. The way she made decisions about our life without consulting me, then presented them as foregone conclusions. The way she introduced me at parties. This is my husband, Daniel. He's an architect. With the emphasis on architect, like it was something quaint, a hobby, an eccentricity she indulged. I'd ignored it all because I loved her. Because I wanted to believe love was enough, but standing there with her brother's smirk and her mother's discomfort and her father's amusement and her own face flushed with anger at me for being humiliated. I realized love was never the variable that mattered. I walked toward Marcus. Catherine tensed. Daniel, what are you? I stopped directly in front of her brother, close enough to see the pores on his nose, the faint scar above his left eyebrow from a skiing accident in Aspen when he was 12, the self-satisfied gleam in his eyes. He was still smirking, certain I'd beg, certain I'd apologize, certain I'd fold, because men like me always folded when men like him pushed. I'd let him think that for years. Let them all think that. But I'd also spent those years watching, learning, gathering. I looked Marcus Whitmore directly in the eyes, and I spoke one sentence. Your offshore accounts in the Caymans total $17 million in untaxed income, which the IRS doesn't know about yet, but they will on Monday when I submit the evidence I've been collecting for the past 2 years. The room fell silent. Not the silence of anticipation, not the silence of shock, the silence of a world ending. Marcus's smirk evaporated. His face went through a remarkable transformation. Confusion, disbelief, and then, like a time-lapse of ice melting, pure white fear. You're bluffing, he whispered. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a flash drive. I set it gently on the table between the roasted beet salad and the wine glasses. Am I? Catherine was staring at the flash drive like it was a live grenade. Daniel, what is this? I didn't look at her. Couldn't yet. If I looked at her, I might lose my nerve, and I'd come too far to lose my nerve now. Your brother has been running a shell company called Meridian Consulting Group, I said, my voice eerily calm. It's registered in Delaware, operates in the Caymans, and exists solely to help his clients and himself avoid paying taxes on international investments. I have copies of the incorporation documents, the bank statements, the client lists, and the internal emails where Marcus explicitly discusses the illegality of the operation. Vivian made a small sound, something between a gasp and a whimper. Marcus reached for the flash drive, but I was faster. I picked it up, held it just out of his reach. I also have evidence of bribes paid to a county official to expedite zoning changes for your Newport development, I continued. Evidence of insider trading related to the GenCorp merger last year, and evidence that you've been skimming money from the family trust, small amounts, nothing your father would notice, but over 5 years, it adds up to about $300,000. Richard stood up so fast his chair fell backward. That's impossible. It's not. I finally looked at Catherine. She'd gone pale. I'm an architect, remember? I noticed structures, patterns, inconsistencies. And for 2 years, I've been noticing a lot of inconsistencies in your brother's finances. Why, Mom? Catherine's voice was barely audible. Why would you do this? Because I loved you, I said simply. And I thought if I could prove to your family that I wasn't just some gold digger, that I was smart enough and valuable enough to protect the Whitmore interests, that maybe I stopped, laughed bitterly. Maybe they'd respect me. Maybe you'd respect me. By spying on my family? Her voice rose. By threatening my brother? I wasn't going to use it, I said. I swear to you, Catherine, I collected this information as insurance, as proof that I understood your world, that I could operate in it. I was never going to submit it to anyone. Then why? Because he called our marriage a fraud. I looked at Marcus. Because you've spent 7 years making me feel like I'm not good enough to breathe the same air as you. And because your sister just chose you over me without a second's hesitation. Marcus had recovered some of his composure. This is extortion. No, I said. Extortion would be if I asked you for something in exchange for my silence. I'm not asking for anything. I'm just telling you that on Monday morning, the IRS, the SEC, and the California Attorney General's office will all receive copies of everything I've found. What they do with it is up to them. You bastard, Marcus breathed. Maybe. I pocketed the flash drive. But I'm a bastard who kept meticulous records. Tell me, Marcus, do you keep meticulous records? Or were you sloppy because you thought nobody was watching? Because you're a Whitmore and Whitmores don't get caught? Richard found his voice. Daniel, let's talk about this. Surely we can come to some kind of arrangement. There is no arrangement. I looked around the table, at these people I tried so hard to please, to impress, to fit in with. I'm done. You're done? Catherine's face twisted. You don't get to be done. This is my family, my life. You can't just, I can. I pulled off my wedding ring, the simple gold band she'd chosen because diamonds are so gauche for men, and set it next to her plate. I want a divorce, Catherine. The word hung in the air like smoke. No, she said. No, you're upset. You're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking clearly for the first time in years. I looked at her, really looked at her, memorizing her face. I loved you so much that I became small for you. I made myself quiet and convenient and unobtrusive because I thought that's what you needed. But you didn't marry me because you loved me. You married me because I was safe, because I'd never challenge you or your family or the world you were born into. And tonight, when your brother called our marriage a lie, you couldn't defend it because some part of you thinks he's right. That's not true, she whispered, but there was no conviction in it. Isn't it? I smiled sadly. You couldn't even take my name, Catherine. We've been married 7 years, and you couldn't even take my name. I turned to leave. If you walk out that door, Etherin said, her voice shaking, don't come back. I stopped, turned. I won't. And if you submit that evidence, if you destroy my brother, I will make sure you get nothing in the divorce. Not the house, not the cars, not a penny. My father's lawyers will bury you. I know, I said. I don't care. And the terrible thing was, I meant it. I walked out of the Whitmore estate with nothing but my phone, my wallet, and a flash drive containing enough evidence to potentially send Marcus Whitmore to prison for a decade. Behind me, I heard Catherine start to cry, heard Vivian trying to comfort her, heard Marcus shouting something about lawyers and consequences. I didn't look back. The night air was cool, clear. The stars were out, barely visible through the light pollution. But there, I stood on the circular driveway looking up at the constellations I could barely see, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Free. My phone buzzed. A text from Catherine. Please come back, we can talk about this. I blocked her number. Another text from a number I didn't recognize. You just made the biggest mistake of your life. Marcus, I blocked him too. I called an Uber. While I waited, I thought about what came next. I had an apartment downtown I'd kept in my name. A small place I used as an office sometimes. I could stay there. I had some money saved. Not much, but enough. And I had the evidence. The question was, would I actually submit it? Part of me, the part that still loved Catherine, that remembered the good times, the early days when I believed we were building something real. That part wanted to delete everything, to let it go, to walk away clean. But another part, the part that had sat through 7 years of subtle condescension, of being made to feel lesser, of watching the woman I loved fail to defend me again and again, that part wanted to burn it all down. The Uber pulled up. A Tesla. How appropriate. Rough night? The driver asked, seeing my expression. You have no idea, I said. We drove through the manicured streets of Montecito, past estates hidden behind gates and hedges, past the kind of wealth that's been accumulated so long it's become invisible, assumed as natural as gravity. I'd never belonged in this world. I'd known that from the start. The mistake was thinking I could. The mistake was thinking love could bridge that gap. My phone buzzed again. Another number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. Mr. Cross? A woman's voice. Professional. This is Jennifer Valdez. I'm an agent with the IRS Criminal Investigation Division. I received an interesting package at my office this evening. My blood went cold. I'm sorry, what? A flash drive. No return address. It contains what appears to be substantial evidence of tax fraud and money laundering related to a Marcus Whitmore and an entity called Meridian Consulting Group. I sat up straight. I didn't send that. The postmark suggests it was mailed 3 days ago. 3 days. Before the dinner. Before everything. I don't understand, I said slowly. Neither do I, Mr. Cross, which is why I'd like to ask you some questions. Would you be available to come to my office tomorrow? Am I in trouble? That depends. I could hear papers rustling. Did you compile this evidence? I thought about lying, thought about what Catherine had said, about her father's lawyers burying me. Yes, I said, I compiled it. Why? Because, I stopped, started again. Because I thought it might be useful someday. And why mail it to me now? I didn't. I swear, I have the flash drive in my pocket right now. Silence, then. So there are two copies. Apparently. More silence. I could hear her thinking. Mr. Cross, I'm going to be direct with you. Tax fraud is a serious crime. Money laundering is a serious crime. But you know what I care about even more? Corruption. And if what's on this drive is accurate, Marcus Whitmore isn't just cheating on his taxes. He's facilitating tax evasion for dozens of other individuals, some of them quite prominent. That's the kind of case that makes careers. I'm not looking for a career, I said. No, but you might be looking for immunity. Her voice turned shrewd. Cooperate with our investigation, provide testimony if needed, and I'll make sure you're protected, both legally and personally. Personally? The Whitmores are powerful people, Mr. Cross. If they think you're the one who brought this to our attention, they'll come after you with everything they have. But if you're a federal witness in an ongoing criminal investigation, well, that's a different story. I leaned my head against the car window, watched the lights of Santa Barbara streak by. I'll need to think about it, I said. You have until Monday, Agent Valdez replied. That's when I'm officially opening the investigation. With or without your cooperation? But I'd prefer with. She hung up. I stared at my phone, mind racing. Someone had mailed a copy of the evidence to the IRS 3 days ago. But who? The only person who knew about it was the Uber driver caught my eye in the rearview mirror. Everything okay? I have no idea, I said honestly. We pulled up to my building, a modest mid-rise in downtown Santa Barbara. Nothing like the Whitmore estate, no chandeliers, no manicured lawns, no generational wealth. Just a one-bedroom apartment with a view of the parking garage and a kitchenette that barely qualified as a kitchen. It felt like home. I thanked the driver, walked inside, rode the elevator to the 4th floor. My hands shook as I unlocked the door. The apartment was exactly as I'd left it. Neat, minimal, a drafting table by the window, bookshelves lined with architecture journals and novels, a couch I'd bought at IKEA and assembled myself. I sat down on that couch and finally let myself process what had happened. I'd left my wife. I'd threatened my brother-in-law with federal prison. I'd walked away from a life of comfort and security. And somehow, impossibly, I felt lighter than I had in years. My phone buzzed. Another unknown number. I considered not answering, but tonight had already gone so far off script that one more surprise couldn't hurt. Hello? Daniel Cross? A man's voice this time. Older, gravelly. Speaking? My name is Robert Chen. I'm an attorney. I represent several individuals who have been, shall we say, financially impacted by Marcus Whitmore's consulting business. I closed my eyes. How did you get this number? I have my sources. Listen, I don't have much time. I know you have evidence against Whitmore. I know you're planning to submit it to the authorities. I'm calling to tell you that you're not alone. I never said I was planning. Please, Mr. Cross, don't insult my intelligence. I've been building a case against Whitmore for 3 years. Civil case mostly, breach of fiduciary duty, fraud. My clients lost millions to his schemes, but I never had enough concrete evidence to make it stick. Until now. What do you want from me? I want to coordinate, Chen said. You go to the IRS, I file civil suits. We hit him from both sides, criminal and civil. He can't fight both battles simultaneously. He'll have to settle with my clients to preserve resources for his criminal defense. Why should I care about your clients getting their money back? Because one of my clients is a nonprofit that provides college scholarships to low-income students, Chen said quietly. Whitmore convinced them to let him manage their endowment. He lost 40% of it in bad investments, then covered it up by showing them fraudulent statements. That's $12 million in scholarships that will never be given out. $12 million in futures that will never happen. I felt sick. There are others, Chen continued. A widow who trusted him with her husband's life insurance, a small business owner who hired him for tax advice and ended up under audit. I'm not asking you to do this for me, Mr. Cross. I'm asking you to do it for them. I need to think. You have until Monday, same as the IRS. Chen paused. For what it's worth, I did my research on you. You're a good man, Daniel. You've been trying to do the right thing in an impossible situation. Don't stop now." He hung up before I could respond. I sat in the dark apartment holding my phone, feeling the weight of what I'd started pressing down on me. This wasn't just about Catherine anymore. Wasn't just about Marcus humiliating me at dinner or years of being made to feel small. This was about justice, real justice. The kind that doesn't care about old money or family names or who went to the right schools. My phone buzzed again. I looked at the screen, expecting another lawyer or federal agent. It was an email, no sender name. The subject line read, "You're welcome." I opened it. "Daniel, you don't know me, but I know you. I've watched you for 2 years, compiling evidence against Marcus Whitmore, never using it, hoping that being smart and useful would be enough to earn respect from people who will never respect anyone they consider beneath them. It broke my heart, because I've been where you are. My name is Sarah. I was Marcus's assistant for 3 years. I saw everything. I know where all the bodies are buried, metaphorically speaking. And when you started investigating him, I noticed. I watched you work, watched you struggle with whether to use what you found. 3 days ago, I made the decision for you. I copied your evidence and sent it to the IRS. By Monday, the investigation will be public. Marcus will be arrested, the Whitmore family will be in crisis, and you'll be free. You might hate me for taking the choice away from you. You might wish you could have walked away clean without burning the bridge. But Daniel, they never would have let you walk away. Catherine would have talked you into staying. Her father would have made promises. Marcus would have threatened you until you backed down. So I did what you couldn't do. I lit the match. The IRS will want to talk to you. Cooperate. Tell them everything. Let them protect you. And when the dust settles, when the Whitmores are too busy with lawyers and audits to come after you, start over. Build the life you actually want, not the life you thought you had to accept. You deserve better than them. You always did. Yes, I read the email 3 times. Then I started to laugh. Not happy laughter, not relieved laughter. The kind of laughter that comes when you realize your entire world has been rearranged by a person you've never met, for reasons you don't fully understand, and there's nothing you can do about it except watch it all unfold. Sarah had sent the evidence 3 days ago, which meant by the time I'd walked into the Whitmore estate tonight, by the time Marcus had called me a gold digger, and Catherine had told me to apologize or leave, by the time I'd threatened Marcus with the flash drive, it was already over. The countdown had already started. I'd thought I was playing a trump card. But I'd been playing a card from a deck that had already been shuffled and dealt. My phone rang. Catherine, I stared at her name on the screen, considered letting it go to voicemail, answered. "Daniel." Her voice was ragged. She'd been crying. "Please tell me, this is a nightmare. Please tell me you're not really doing this." "I'm not doing anything," I said. "Not anymore." "What does that mean?" "It means someone else already submitted the evidence 3 days ago. The IRS is opening an investigation on Monday, whether I cooperate or not." Silence. Then in a whisper, "Who?" "I don't know." It wasn't quite a lie. I knew a name, but not a person. "Does it matter?" "Of course it matters. Daniel, Marcus could go to prison. My family, our family, not our family," I interrupted gently. "Your family, Catherine. You made that very clear tonight." I was angry. I didn't mean, "Yes, you did." I felt tired suddenly. Bone deep tired. "You meant every word. And you know what? I don't blame you. You were born into that world. You can't see outside of it. Marcus is your brother. Of course you'd defend him over me." "Then come back," she said desperately. "Come home. We'll figure this out together. We'll hire lawyers. We'll fight this. No. Daniel, I want a divorce, Catherine. That part wasn't anger. That part I meant." I heard her breath catch. "You're really leaving me." "I really am. Because of tonight? Because I didn't defend you the way you wanted?" "Because of every night for the last 7 years," I said. "Tonight was just the first time I was honest about it." Silence stretched between us. I could hear her breathing. Could imagine her in the Whitmore estate, probably still in the dining room, surrounded by her family, trying to keep it together. "I thought you loved me," she whispered finally. "I did," I said. "I do. But love isn't enough when the person you love doesn't respect you. And you don't, Catherine. You never have. I've just been too afraid to admit it. That's not fair, isn't it? Tell me honestly, did you ever see me as your equal? Or was I always just the project? The fixer-upper, the three-legged dog you could rescue and feel good about yourself for saving? She didn't answer. Couldn't answer. Because we both knew the truth. I'll have a lawyer contact you about the divorce, I said. You can have the house, the cars, all of it. I don't want anything that came from your family. Daniel, goodbye. Catherine. I hung up before she could respond, blocked her number before she could call back. Then I sat in the dark apartment and cried for the first time in years. Not for the marriage I was ending, not even for the life I was leaving behind. I cried for the man I'd been when I met Catherine. The man who'd believed he could be enough. The man who'd slowly, painfully learned that some gaps can't be bridged, no matter how hard you try. I cried for 7 years of small compromises that had added up to the complete erosion of my self-worth. And I cried because even now, even after everything, part of me still loved her. That was the cruelest part. Eventually, I ran out of tears. I sat in the silence in the dark, and I thought about Monday. About federal agents and criminal investigations, and the Whitmore family's carefully constructed world beginning to collapse. About Marcus in handcuffs, Catherine humiliated, Richard and Vivian watching their golden boy fall. I should have felt satisfaction, vindication. Instead, I felt hollow. Revenge, I realized, was supposed to be cathartic, but this didn't feel like revenge. This felt like documentation. Like finally, after years of being gaslit about my worth, having someone else confirm that, yes, I'd been right all along. Marcus was a criminal, the Whitmores were corrupt. Their treatment of me hadn't been justified. But knowing you're right doesn't fix what's broken inside you. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. The library project is still yours if you want it. We don't care about your personal life. We care about your work. Tom Rodriguez, City Council. I stared at the message, felt something warm unfurl in my chest. The library, the public project, the work that actually meant something. I texted back, I want it. I'll have designs ready by next month. Rodriguez responded immediately. Looking forward to it, I set down my phone and looked around my small, modest apartment, at the drafting table where I did my real work, not the vanity projects for wealthy clients who wanted trophy homes, at the bookshelves filled with things I'd chosen because I loved them, not because they'd impress anyone. This was my space, my life, the one I'd had before Catherine, the one I'd neglected in favor of trying to fit into hers. Maybe it was time to reclaim it. I pulled out my laptop, opened my email, and started typing. Agent Valdez, I'll cooperate with your investigation. I can come to your office Monday morning. I'll bring everything I have. I only ask one thing, protection. Not just legal protection, but actual security. The Whitmores have resources and connections that I don't. If they decide I'm the enemy, I need to know someone has my back. Sincerely, Daniel Cross. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. Then I opened a second email. Mr. Chen, I'll coordinate with you. Let's destroy him properly. Daniel send. And finally, one more email. This one to an address that had appeared in Sarah's message, buried in the metadata. Sarah, I don't know who you are. I don't know why you did this, but thank you. Thank you for seeing what I couldn't see. Thank you for making the choice I was too afraid to make. Thank you for lighting the match. I hope someday I can buy you a coffee and hear your story. I think it might be as complicated as mine. Daniel send. I closed my laptop and stood up. Stretched, felt my spine pop in 3 places. Tomorrow, everything would change. The investigation would become public. The Whitmores would lawyer up. Catherine would probably hate me forever. But tonight in this quiet apartment, I was just Daniel Cross from Pittsburgh, an architect who believed in public spaces and meaningful work, a man who'd loved the wrong woman for the right reasons, a man who was, for the first time in 7 years, exactly where he belonged. I made myself a cup of tea, Earl Grey, the kind Catherine had always hated because it was too pedestrian, and I sat by the window watching the city lights below. Monday was coming, let it come. Monday arrived like an executioner, prompt and inevitable. I woke at 5 a.m., not because I set an alarm, but because my body wouldn't let me sleep anymore. The pre-dawn light filtered through the blinds of my apartment, casting everything in shades of gray that felt appropriate for the day ahead. I made coffee, black, strong, the way I drunk it before Catherine had convinced me to develop a taste for expensive lattes with oat milk and vanilla syrup. Funny how many small preferences I changed to accommodate her world. Funny how quickly they came flooding back now that I was alone. Agent Valdez had scheduled our meeting for 9 a.m. at the IRS building in downtown Los Angeles. 2 hours away, traffic permitting. I'd need to leave by 6:30 at the latest. I showered, shaved, put on a suit I'd bought myself 4 years ago for a client presentation. It wasn't expensive like the suits Catherine had bought me, the Tom Ford and Ermenegildo Zegna pieces that hung in the closet of the house I'd left, but it was mine. Navy blue, simple, professional. I looked at myself in the mirror and saw, for the first time in years, someone I recognized. My phone had been silent all night. Either Catherine had given up trying to reach me, or the Whitmores had already lawyered up and been advised not to make contact. I suspected the latter. At 6:15, I received an email from Robert Chen, the attorney representing Marcus's victims. It contained a single line: "Godspeed, Mr. Cross. You're doing the right thing." Attached was a PDF, a class action lawsuit filed at 6 a.m. that morning against Marcus Whitmore and Meridian Consulting Group, alleging fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, and gross negligence. 12 plaintiffs. Total damages sought, $47 million. Chen hadn't wasted any time. I grabbed my laptop bag, the flash drive with all my evidence, and a folder of documents I'd printed out the night before. Everything organized, indexed, cross-referenced. The architect in me couldn't help but create structure, even in chaos. The drive to Los Angeles was surreal. I took the 101 South, watching the sun rise over the mountains, listening to a podcast about urban planning that I'd been meaning to catch up on for months. Normal things, mundane things. While my entire world was undergoing continental shift, traffic was lighter than expected. I made it to downtown LA by 8:30, found parking in a garage near the Federal Building, and sat in my car for 10 minutes, breathing. This was it. Once I walked into that building, once I sat down with Agent Valdez and started talking, there was no going back. The Whitmores would know it was me. Catherine would know it was me. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. They're already moving assets. Offshore accounts are being emptied, wire transfers going out to shell companies in Panama and Singapore. If you don't act fast, there won't be anything left to recover. No signature. But I knew it was Sarah. I texted back, "How do you know this?" The response came immediately. "Because I'm watching. I never really left." "Now go." Clock's ticking. I got out of the car. The IRS building was exactly what you'd expect. Imposing, bureaucratic, designed to intimidate. I went through security, got a visitor badge, and was escorted to the 7th floor by a young woman who made small talk about the weather while I tried not to throw up. Agent Valdez's office was small but organized with the same kind of precise attention to detail I appreciated. Files stacked neatly, post-it notes color-coded, a whiteboard covered in what looked like a flowchart of shell companies. She was younger than I'd expected it from her voice on the phone. Early 40s, maybe. Sharp eyes behind rimless glasses. A no-nonsense handshake. "Mr. Cross, thank you for coming." "Thank you for the immunity." She smiled slightly. "We haven't officially granted immunity yet. That depends on what you tell me and how useful it is." "Fair enough." We sat. She offered coffee, which I declined because my hands were already shaking. She opened a laptop, pulled up a recording device, and went through the standard disclosures about the interview being recorded, my right to have an attorney present, the fact that lying to a federal agent was itself a crime. "I understand," I said. "Good. Let's start at the beginning. How did you first become aware of Marcus Whitmore's illegal activities?" I told her everything. How I'd married Catherine 7 years ago. How I'd slowly realized that her family would never fully accept me. How I'd started paying attention to Marcus's business dealings because I wanted to understand his world, to prove I was smart enough to operate in it. how I'd noticed inconsistencies, financial statements that didn't add up, corporate structures that seemed unnecessarily complex, offshore accounts that appeared and disappeared from year to year. How I'd used my access to the Whitmore family's digital infrastructure. Catherine had given me her family's shared cloud password years ago without thinking twice, to compile evidence, emails, bank statements, incorporation documents, spreadsheets tracking money flows. I wasn't trying to build a criminal case, I explained. I was just trying to understand. And the more I understood, the more I realized Marcus wasn't just cutting corners. He was running a full-scale tax evasion and money laundering operation. Valdez made notes. And you never confronted him? Never. I knew he'd destroy me if I did, so I just collected information, stored it, told myself I'd never use it. But you did use it. Not the way you think. I explained about the dinner, about Marcus's humiliation, Catherine's ultimatum, my threat to submit the evidence. But I didn't submit it, I finished. Someone else did. Someone named Sarah, who used to work for Marcus. Valdez nodded slowly. We've been trying to locate Sarah Edmonds for the past 3 days. She seems to have disappeared. Sarah Edmonds, I repeated. The full name. Now I knew. She was Marcus Whitmore's executive assistant from 2019 to 22. She left the company suddenly. No forwarding address, no references. We think she knew too much and got scared. Or got angry, I thought. Got tired of watching him destroy people and decided to do something about it. Can I see the evidence you've compiled? Valdez asked. I handed over the flash drive and the folder of documents. She spent the next hour going through it, occasionally asking questions, sometimes whistling softly when she found something particularly damning. This is remarkable work, Mr. Cross, she said finally. You could have been a forensic accountant. I just noticed patterns. These patterns are going to put Marcus Whitmore away for a very long time. She closed the laptop, and potentially several of his clients as well. Some of these names, she shook her head. You're going to make a lot of powerful people that very unhappy. I already have, I said. We talked for another 2 hours. She asked about specific documents, about how I'd accessed certain accounts, about whether I'd shared this information with anyone else. I was honest about everything, even the parts that made me look bad. The invasion of privacy, the betrayal of Catherine's trust. She gave you the password, Valdez pointed out. Legally, that complicates any claim of unauthorized access. And everything you found was related to criminal activity, which you're now reporting to the proper authorities. You're protected under whistleblower statutes. I don't want to be a whistleblower, I said. I just want to disappear. I'm afraid that's not an option anymore. She leaned back in her chair. You're going to be the key witness in a major federal case. The media will find out. Your name will be public. The Whitmores will come after you with everything they have. I know. We can offer you protection. Not witness protection, not yet, but we can make sure they can't intimidate or harm you. We have resources. What kind of resources? Restraining orders if they harass you, monitoring of your safety, and if things escalate, we can move you into formal witness protection. New identity, new location, the whole package. New identity, new location, a chance to become someone else entirely. Part of me found that appealing. The rest of me was tired of running, of hiding, of making myself smaller. I don't want to deal with Pierre, I said. I want to face this head on. I want them to see that I'm not afraid anymore. Valdez studied me for a long moment. You know they'll destroy your reputation. They'll claim you stole from them, that you fabricated evidence, that you're a disgruntled ex-husband trying to hurt your wife's family. Let them try. They will, Mr. Cross. They absolutely will. I stood up to leave. Valdez walked me to the elevator. One more thing, she said as the elevator doors opened. The person who mailed us the original evidence, Sarah Edmonds, if she contacts you again, I need you to let me know immediately. She may be in danger. People who cross Marcus Whitmore tend to have unfortunate accidents. The elevator doors closed before I could respond. I drove back to Santa Barbara in a daze. The meeting had gone well, better than expected. Valdez believed me. The evidence was solid. Marcus was going to be indicted, but the weight of what came next was starting to settle on me like a physical thing. The public exposure, the media scrutiny, the Whitmore family's vengeance. I was halfway home when my phone rang. A local number. Hello? Mr. Cross? A woman's voice. Unfamiliar. This is Diana Reeves from the Santa Barbara News Press. I'm calling about the federal investigation into Marcus Whitmore. Would you be willing to comment? My stomach dropped. How did you get this number? I'm a journalist, Mr. Cross. I have sources. Now, I understand you're the one who provided evidence to the IRS. Can you confirm? I hung up. 30 seconds later, another call. Different number. Mr. Cross, this is Tom Bradley from the Los Angeles Times. I hung up again, and again, and again. By the time I reached my apartment, I had 17 missed calls from various news organizations and 3 voicemails from lawyers claiming to represent interested parties who wanted to discuss the situation. The news had broken, not officially, not from the IRS, but through leaks. Someone had talked, and now I was about to become very famous for something I'd never wanted anyone to know about. I turned off my phone and sat in the dark apartment, listening to the silence. Then someone knocked on my door. I froze. Nobody knew I was here. I'd kept this apartment quiet, separate from my life with Catherine. Another knock. Mr. Cross? Daniel? I know you're in there. I can see your car in the parking garage. I looked through the peephole. A woman stood in the hallway, mid-30s, professional attire, holding a leather portfolio. Not a journalist. Her posture was wrong. Too confident, too comfortable. Who are you? I called through the door. My name is Lisa Warren. I'm an attorney with Goldman & Associates. I represent Sarah Edmonds. I opened the door. Lisa Warren had the kind of presence that made you believe she won cases through sheer force of will. She walked into my apartment like she owned it, set down her portfolio, and turned to face me. Sarah sends her regards, she said, and her apologies for not warning you about the media storm. It moved faster than she expected. Where is she? Safe. That's all I can tell you. She's the one who retained me to represent you. You absolutely need representation, Mr. Cross. The Whitmores are already assembling a legal team that would make the Pentagon jealous. Catherine filed for divorce this morning. Did you know that? I hadn't. The fact shouldn't have hurt, but it did. She's claiming you married her under false pretenses, Warren continued, that you've been embezzling from her family's business accounts, and that the evidence against Marcus is fabricated. She's also seeking a restraining order against you. That's insane. I never embezzled anything. I never even worked for their business. Doesn't matter. It's a strategy. Discredit you before the criminal trial. Make you look like the villain. By the time Marcus goes to trial, the jury will have spent months hearing about how you're a con artist who infiltrated a wealthy family. I sat down heavily. Can they do that? They're doing it right now. TMZ has already picked up the story. Architect husband betrays wealthy wife, fabricates evidence against brother. The narrative is being written as we speak. So what do I do? Warren smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a lawyer who'd been waiting for someone to ask that exact question. We fight back, she said. We tell your story, the truth, all of it. I don't want to be in the media. Too late for that. You're already there. The question is whether you let them control the narrative or whether you take control yourself. I thought about it. About 7 years of being silent, of being small, of letting the Whitmores define who I was. What did you have in mind? I asked. Lisa Warren didn't waste time. Within 48 hours, she'd assembled what she called a strategic communications team, a crisis PR specialist, a media consultant, and a documentary filmmaker who specialized in exposing corporate corruption. We're going to tell your story, Warren explained during our first strategy session, held in a conference room at her law firm's office in downtown Santa Barbara. But we're going to tell it right, controlled, strategic. Every interview, every statement, every public appearance is calculated to reinforce the truth. You're not the villain. You're the whistleblower who exposed a criminal enterprise. I don't want to be a whistleblower, I said for what felt like the 100th time. I just want, what you want is irrelevant now, Warren interrupted, not unkindly. You're a public figure whether you like it or not. The question is, what kind of public figure? The spurned husband who fabricated evidence? Or the man who risked everything to expose corruption? She had a point. The PR specialist, a woman named Amanda Chen, who'd previously handled crisis communications for tech CEOs caught in scandals, pulled up a tablet. We've been monitoring social media. The Whitmore family's narrative is gaining traction. Look at this. She showed me a Twitter thread that had gone viral. Someone claiming to be a family friend of the Whitmores had posted a long, emotional account of how I'd manipulated Catherine, how I'd preyed on her kindness, how I'd wormed my way into the family to steal their wealth. The thread had 300,000 likes and had been retweeted by several verified accounts, including a former congressman and a reality TV star. This is bullshit, I said. None of this is true. Doesn't matter, Amanda said. It's compelling. It's emotional. It fits a narrative people want to believe. Wealthy family targeted by scheming outsider. We need to counter it with something equally compelling. The truth isn't compelling enough. The truth is complex. People don't like complexity. They like stories with clear heroes and villains. Right now, you're the villain in their story. We need to make you the hero in ours. The documentary filmmaker, an intense man in his 50s named Marcus Green, no relation to Marcus Whitmore, thankfully, leaned forward. I've been researching the Whitmore family. Old money, yes. Respected, yes. But not clean. Your brother-in-law's crimes are just the tip of the iceberg. He pulled out his laptop and started showing me files. Articles from the 1980s about Richard Whitmore's real estate deals that had displaced low-income families. A sealed lawsuit from 2005 alleging discrimination at one of the Whitmore companies. Links to political campaigns funded by Whitmore money, candidates who'd later voted for policies that benefited Whitmore business interests. Nothing illegal, Green said, or nothing provably illegal, but a pattern of behavior that prioritizes profit and power over people. The Whitmores have been operating like this for generations. You're not the villain, Daniel. You're the first person with enough courage or enough anger to expose them. Or enough stupidity, I muttered. Warren smiled. Sometimes courage and stupidity look the same from the outside. The difference is what you do next. We spent the next 6 hours crafting a strategy. It felt like planning a military campaign, which I suppose it was. The Whitmores had resources, connections, and generations of practice protecting their reputation. We had the truth and a man who was tired of being quiet. The plan was multi-pronged. First, Warren would file a countersuit against Catherine, contesting her divorce claims and her allegations of embezzlement. We'd demand full discovery of Whitmore family finances, which would give us legal access to even more documentation of their questionable dealings. Second, Amanda would arrange a series of carefully controlled interviews. No ambush journalism, no gotcha questions. We'd choose sympathetic venues, podcasts known for in-depth storytelling, news programs with reputations for fairness. Third, Green would begin production on a documentary about the Whitmore family's history, using my story as the entry point, but expanding to show the broader pattern of behavior. It'll take 6 months to a year to complete, Green said. But when it's done, it'll be definitive. The Whitmores won't be able to hide behind their reputation anymore. And what do I do in the meantime, I asked. You live your life, Warren said. Publicly, visibly. You go to work on that library project. You have coffee with friends. You exist as a normal person who happens to be fighting a legal battle. Every day, you're not hiding. Every day, you're functioning normally. You undermine their narrative that you're some kind of unstable con artist. It sounded exhausting. It was exhausting. The first interview was scheduled for the following week with a podcast called The Invisible Hand, which specialized in stories about economic inequality and corporate corruption. The host, a woman named Rachel Torres, had a reputation for being tough, but fair. Amanda coached me for hours. Don't get defensive. Don't apologize for exposing the truth. Frame everything in terms of justice, not revenge. You didn't do this to hurt Catherine. You did this because Marcus was breaking the law and hurting innocent people. But I did want to hurt them, I admitted, at least partially. After that dinner, after the humiliation, I know, but that's not the story we're telling. That's not the truth that Marv says. Yes, you were angry. Yes, you wanted them to see you weren't powerless. But the evidence you collected is real. The crimes are real. Your motivation doesn't change the facts. She was right, but it felt dishonest somehow. Like I was creating a sanitized version of myself, a hero without complexity or doubt. People contain multitudes, Amanda said, reading my expression. You can be both hurt and right, angry and justified. We're not lying about who you are. We're just choosing which truths to emphasize. The night before the podcast interview, I couldn't sleep. I kept rehearsing answers in my head, imagining all the ways it could go wrong. What if I froze? What if I said something stupid? What if Rachel Torres asked a question I wasn't prepared for and I revealed something that hurt the case? At 2 a.m., my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You're going to do great tomorrow. Just tell the truth, the whole truth, the messy, complicated human truth. People will respond to that more than any polished PR narrative. Sarah, still watching, still guiding me from whatever hiding place she'd found. I texted back, why are you doing this? Why did you send that evidence? Why hire Warren to represent me? The response came quickly. Because I was you 3 years ago. I loved someone I thought loved me back. I ignored red flags because I wanted to believe. And when I finally saw the truth, I had no proof, no documentation, just my word against theirs. They destroyed my reputation, made me seem crazy, vindictive, a disgruntled employee. I lost everything. I won't let that happen to you. Now go to sleep. Tomorrow you start taking your life back. The podcast interview took place in a small studio in Silver Lake, Los Angeles. Rachel Torres was younger than I'd expected, maybe early 30s, with sharp eyes and a gentle demeanor that probably made people underestimate her. Before we start, she said, I want you to know this is your story. I'll ask questions, but you can take as much time as you need to answer. If something feels unfair or incomplete, tell me, we can re-record. The goal is truth, not drama. I relaxed slightly. Thank you. We settled into comfortable chairs with expensive microphones between us. Rachel explained the format. She'd give a brief introduction to the story, then we'd talk for about 90 minutes, and she'd edit it down to a cohesive hour-long episode. Ready? She asked. I nodded. The red recording light came on. I'm here today with Daniel Cross, Rachel began, an architect from Santa Barbara whose decision to expose his brother-in-law's financial crimes has sparked a federal investigation in a very public family war. Daniel, thank you for being here. Thank you for having me. Let's start at the beginning. How did you meet Catherine Whitmore? I told the story I'd told 100 times at parties, at family gatherings, to friends. We'd met at a fundraiser for arts education. She'd been there representing her family's foundation. I'd been there because I'd donated some architectural work to a community center, and they'd invited me. We started talking about public spaces, I said, about how architecture can either include or exclude communities. She seemed genuinely interested, passionate even. I fell for her that night. And the family, when did you meet them? About 3 months into dating, Catherine invited me to her father's birthday party. It was intimidating. The Whitmore estate is like something out of a movie. Old money, generational wealth. I showed up in a suit I'd bought off the rack at Nordstrom, and everyone else was wearing custom tailoring. Did they accept you? I paused. This was the first real question, the first moment where I could choose between the polished narrative and the messy truth. Sarah's text echoed in my mind. Tell the whole truth. No, I said, they tolerated me. There's a difference. Richard Whitmore was polite but distant. Vivian was kind in the way you're kind to a child's imaginary friend. You humor it, but don't take it seriously. And Marcus, I stopped, started again. Marcus looked at me like I was something he'd need to deal with eventually. Because you weren't part of their social class. Because I was an outsider, someone who didn't understand their rules, their world, someone who might disrupt the carefully maintained image of Whitmore family perfection. Rachel leaned forward. But you married Catherine anyway. I loved her, and I thought love would be enough. I thought if I worked hard enough, if I proved myself valuable enough, they'd eventually accept me. Did they? No, and eventually I realized they never would. The question wasn't whether I was good enough. The question was whether I was their kind, and I wasn't. We talked for another hour. I described the slow erosion of my self-worth, the small compromises that added up to a complete loss of identity. The way Catherine would introduce me as my husband, the architect, with that subtle emphasis that made my profession sound quaint. The way family discussions about investments and business would go silent when I entered the room, as if my presence made such talk inappropriate. When did you start investigating Marcus? Rachel asked. I didn't set out to investigate him, I said carefully. I was trying to understand his world. I'd sit in on family discussions about business, and Marcus would talk about his consulting firm, about helping clients with tax optimization strategies. It sounded legitimate, but something felt off. What felt off? The vagueness, the way he'd never give specifics, the offshore accounts that appeared in estate planning documents but were never discussed openly. As an architect, I'm trained to notice when structures don't make sense, when there are gaps in the logic. Marcus's business had a lot of gaps. I explained how I'd started digging, carefully using access Catherine had given me without thinking twice. Family cloud storage, shared financial documents, email accounts they'd never bothered to properly secure. I wasn't trying to build a criminal case, I emphasized. I was trying to prove to myself that I understood their world, that I was smart enough to operate in it. When did you realize what you'd found was evidence of crimes? Gradually. First, I thought maybe the offshore accounts were legitimate tax strategies, gray area stuff that rich people do. But the more I dug, the more clearly illegal it became. Marcus wasn't just minimizing tax liability. He was hiding income, laundering money, helping clients evade taxes entirely, and he was getting paid enormous fees to do it. Did you confront him? Never. I knew he'd destroy me if I did, so I just collected the evidence, stored it, told myself I'd never use it. But you did use it. This was the moment, the pivot point in the story. I could tell the sanitized version. I exposed the crimes because it was the right thing to do, because innocent people were being hurt. Or I could tell the truth. I used it as a weapon, I said. At a family dinner, Marcus humiliated me, called my marriage a con job, said I'd married Catherine for money. And my voice cracked slightly. She didn't defend me. She told me to apologize to Marcus or leave. So you threatened to expose him? I did. I pulled out a flash drive with all the evidence and told him the IRS would have it by Monday. I wanted him to feel powerless the way he'd made me feel powerless. I wanted him to know that I wasn't someone he could just dismiss. But you didn't send the evidence. No, someone else did. Sarah Edmonds, Marcus's former assistant. She'd been watching me compile evidence for 2 years. She sent it to the IRS 3 days before that dinner. By the time I made my threat, the investigation was already starting. I just didn't know it. Rachel let the silence sit for a moment. Then, do you regret threatening Marcus? I regret that I needed to. I regret that 7 years of trying to prove my worth to that family led to a moment where the only way I could feel powerful was to threaten to destroy them. But do I regret exposing the crimes? No, because those crimes are real. The people Marcus hurt are real. My motivation doesn't change that. We talked about the aftermath, the media storm, the Whitmore family's counterattack, Catherine's divorce filing, and her allegations that I'd fabricated everything. The woman you love is publicly calling you a liar and a criminal, Rachel said. How do you process that? I don't know if I do process it, I admitted. Part of me still loves her, still remembers the good times, the early days when I believed we were building something real. But I'm also starting to understand that I loved an idea of her, not the reality. The real Catherine is the one who chose her family's reputation over the truth. The real Catherine is the one who couldn't defend me when I needed her to. Are you angry? I'm heartbroken. And yeah, I'm angry. But mostly I'm just tired. Tired of being small. Tired of apologizing for existing. Tired of trying to fit into a world that was never going to accept me. Rachel asked a few more questions about the legal case, about what came next, about how I was protecting myself from the Whitmore family's inevitable retaliation. Then she asked one final question. If you could go back to that fundraiser 9 years ago, knowing everything you know now, would you still approach Catherine? Would you still fall in love with her? I thought about it, really thought about it. Yes, I said finally, because that relationship, as painful as it became, taught me who I am. It taught me what I'm willing to compromise and what I'm not. It taught me that love without respect is just another form of submission. I needed to learn those lessons, even if the tuition was brutal. And now? Now I'm building a library, a public space that belongs to everyone, regardless of their income or family name. I'm doing work that matters to me, not work designed to impress people who will never be impressed. I'm living in a small apartment that I can afford on my own salary. I'm becoming the person I was before I tried to become someone I thought Catherine needed me to be. Rachel smiled. That sounds like a happy ending. It's not an ending, I corrected. It's a beginning. The trial is still coming. The Whitmores are still fighting. The media is still treating this like a soap opera. But for the first time in years, I'm not afraid. I'm not hiding, I'm just living. The interview ended. Rachel said it was some of the best material she'd recorded in years. Amanda, who'd been listening from the control room, gave me a thumbs up. I felt exhausted and exhilarated in equal measure. We drove back to Santa Barbara. Amanda kept checking social media, monitoring for any leaks about the interview, any new attacks from the Whitmore camp. They're quiet, she said, sounding suspicious. Too quiet. When wealthy families go silent, it usually means they're planning something big. She was right to be suspicious. The attack came the next morning. I woke to my phone exploding with notifications, text messages from numbers I didn't recognize, emails from journalists, voicemails from unknown callers. I checked Twitter and immediately wished I hadn't. Breaking. Sources close to the Whitmore family claim Daniel Cross has a history of mental health issues and was hospitalized for a psychotic break 2 years ago. Family concerned about his stability and the reliability of his allegations. The tweet was from a verified account belonging to a gossip blogger with millions of followers. It had been retweeted 50,000 times in the first hour. It was completely false. I'd never been hospitalized, never had a psychotic break, never even seen a therapist, though maybe I should have. But the narrative was out there now, spreading like wildfire. Attached to the tweet was a grainy photo that was supposedly me leaving a psychiatric facility, actually a photo of me leaving a regular doctor's office after a routine checkup, but cropped and filtered to look more dramatic. My phone rang. Lisa Warren. I saw, she said before I could speak. It's defamation. Clear, unambiguous defamation. We'll sue. But the damage is already done. People will believe it. They'll think I'm crazy, that everything I've said is unreliable, which is exactly why they're doing it. The Whitmores know they can't fight the evidence. It's too solid. So they're fighting your credibility instead. If they can make you seem unstable, a jury might doubt everything you say. So what do? You stay calm. You don't respond on social media. You don't give them the reaction they want, and you let me handle the legal response. But staying calm was harder than it sounded. By noon, the story had been picked up by major news outlets. Questions raised about whistleblowers' mental health. Friends of Whitmore family expressed concern for Daniel Cross. Friends? What friends? I didn't know these people. They were PR operatives, paid consultants, professional reputation managers doing what they did best. Destroying someone's credibility before the public had time to examine the facts. Amanda called an emergency meeting. We need to counter this now, today. We can't let it sit. How? I asked. What can I possibly say that will matter? They've already decided I'm crazy. You go on camera, she said. You show them you're rational, coherent, calm. You provide medical records proving you have never been hospitalized for mental health issues. You make them look like liars. I don't want to share my medical records with the world. Then you let them win. I hated how stark she made it sound, but she was right. We arranged a press conference for that afternoon. Warren advised against it. Press conferences are unpredictable. Someone could ask a question you're not prepared for, but Amanda insisted it was necessary. The Whitmores are controlling the narrative because they're louder and better funded, Amanda said. We need to be loud too. We need to show that Daniel isn't hiding, isn't afraid, isn't unstable. The press conference was held at Warren's law office. About 30 journalists showed up, plus camera crews from local news stations. I stood at a podium with Warren on one side and Amanda on the other, feeling like I was about to jump off a cliff. I read from a prepared statement. My name is Daniel Cross. I'm an architect, a whistleblower, and the target of a coordinated smear campaign by one of California's wealthiest families. This morning, false claims were made about my mental health. These claims are lies, designed to distract from the very real evidence of financial crimes I've provided to federal investigators. I held up a folder. These are medical records from my primary care physician, covering the past 10 years. They show no history of psychiatric hospitalization, no diagnosis of any psychotic disorder, no treatment for any mental health crisis. I'm releasing these records to the public, though I shouldn't have to. My medical history is private, but the Whitmore family has left me no choice. I paused, looked directly at the cameras. Let me be clear. I understand why they're doing this. The evidence against Marcus Whitmore is overwhelming. $17 million in offshore accounts, documented communications about tax evasion, a client list that reads like a who's who of people trying to avoid paying what they owe to society. The Whitmores can't fight the facts, so they're attacking me personally. They want you to doubt my credibility so you won't examine the evidence. But the evidence doesn't care about my credibility. Bank statements don't lie because I'm allegedly unstable. Email threads don't disappear because I'm supposedly crazy. The truth exists independent of what the Whitmore family wants you to believe about me. Someone shouted a question. Are you saying the Whitmore family fabricated the mental health allegations? Yes, completely fabricated. Why would they do that? Because they're desperate. Because their golden child is about to be indicted for federal crimes. Because their reputation is about to be permanently damaged. Desperate people do desperate things. Another question. What about your wife's allegations that you fabricated the evidence? Catherine is protecting her family, I understand that. But she's wrong. The evidence is real. Federal investigators have verified its authenticity. This isn't a he said, she said situation. This is documented proof of crimes versus a wealthy family's attempt to avoid consequences. The questions continued for 20 minutes. I answered everyone as calmly as I could, though inside I was shaking. When it was over, Amanda whispered, "You did great. That's how you fight back." The press conference got significant coverage, not as much as the mental health allegations. Scandal always spreads faster than truth, but enough to plant doubt in people's minds. Maybe Daniel Cross wasn't crazy. Maybe the Whitmores were just very, very good at damage control. That night, I received an email from Agent Valdez. Mr. Cross, I wanted you to know that the grand jury indictment of Marcus Whitmore will be announced tomorrow morning. He'll be charged with tax evasion, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit fraud. Total of 17 counts. If convicted on all counts, he's looking at 20-30 years in federal prison. I also wanted to let you know that we've identified 3 additional individuals who were using Meridian Consulting Group's services to evade taxes. We're building cases against them as well. Your evidence made this possible. Whatever the Whitmore family says about you, whatever they try to do to your reputation, remember that. You exposed real crimes. You protected future victims. That matters. Stay safe. JV, I read the email 3 times. Tomorrow, Marcus would be indicted. Tomorrow, the Whitmore family's worst nightmare would become official. Tomorrow, there would be no more denying, no more spinning, no more claiming I'd fabricated everything. Tomorrow, the truth would be undeniable. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt hollow. Revenge, it turns out, doesn't fill the empty spaces. It just makes you aware of how much space there is to fill. My phone buzzed. Sarah, tomorrow they'll try to blame you for ruining him. Don't let them. Marcus ruined himself. You just turned on the lights. I texted back, when can I meet you? I want to thank you in person. Soon. First, we need to make sure you're safe. The Whitmores are going to escalate. They always do when they're cornered. What do you mean escalate? Just be careful. Watch your back. Don't go anywhere alone. The message should have scared me. Maybe it did, but I was too tired to process fear anymore. I went to bed early knowing that tomorrow would bring a media firestorm unlike anything I'd experienced so far. I was right about the firestorm. I was wrong about almost everything else. Marcus Whitmore was arrested at 6 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. I know this because every news station in California covered it live. Helicopter footage of federal agents arriving at the Whitmore estate in Montecito. Marcus being let out in handcuffs, wearing pajamas and a look of utter disbelief. Catherine standing in the doorway, her mother collapsed in tears behind her. It was, objectively, what I'd wanted, what I'd worked toward, even if I hadn't fully admitted it to myself. It felt terrible. I watched the footage from my apartment, coffee growing cold in my hand, and I felt no satisfaction. Just a deep, aching sadness for all of us. For Marcus, who destroyed himself through greed and arrogance. For Catherine, who was watching her family implode. For Vivian and Richard, whose golden years would now be spent in courtrooms and scandal. Even for myself, because I'd loved these people once, in my own complicated way. My phone rang. Lisa Warren. Have you seen the news? I'm watching it now. Okay, here's what's going to happen today. Every journalist in the country is going to want a comment from you. Don't give them one. Let the indictment speak for itself. The last thing we need is you looking celebratory or vindictive. I don't feel celebratory. Good. Keep that energy. The narrative we want is, reluctant whistleblower did the right thing despite personal cost. Not, vengeful ex-husband destroyed his wife's family. The rest of the day was a blur of phone calls, emails, and news alerts. The indictment was unsealed at 9 a.m. 17 counts, just as Agent Valdez had said. The federal prosecutor held a press conference, outlining the charges in detail that made it clear this wasn't a matter of different interpretations of tax law. This was straightforward fraud. Marcus was released on $1 million bond with travel restrictions and GPS monitoring. His passport was surrendered. His assets were frozen pending investigation. The Whitmore family's PR team went into overdrive. They released a statement expressing shock and disappointment at these baseless allegations, in full confidence that Marcus would be completely vindicated. By evening, the story had evolved. Conservative media outlets were framing it as government overreach, persecution of successful business owners. Liberal outlets were calling it long overdue accountability for the wealthy elite. Everyone had an opinion. Nobody seemed interested in the actual victims. The nonprofit that had lost scholarship money, the widow who'd trusted Marcus with her husband's life insurance, the small business owners who'd ended up under IRS audit after taking his advice. Robert Chen, the attorney representing Marcus's victims, held his own press conference. He was better at this than I would have been. Calm, factual, putting faces and names to the people Marcus had hurt. This isn't about politics, Chen said. This isn't about class warfare. This is about a man who exploited people's trust for personal gain. My clients aren't wealthy. They're not powerful. They're ordinary people who believed they were getting expert financial advice and instead were led into situations that cost them everything. He introduced 3 of his clients. An elderly woman whose retirement savings had been decimated. A nonprofit director whose scholarship program had been gutted. An immigrant small business owner who'd nearly lost everything in an IRS audit. Their stories were heartbreaking, and they made it impossible to paint Marcus as a victim of government overreach. That night, Catherine called. I'd blocked her number, but she called from a different phone. I answered without thinking. Daniel, her voice was wrecked. Please, we need to talk. I don't think that's a good idea. My brother is facing 30 years in prison because of you. Because of himself, I corrected gently. I didn't make him commit fraud, Catherine. I just documented it. You destroyed my family. Your family destroyed itself. I just stopped enabling the fiction that everything was fine. Silence. Then quietly, I hate you. I know. I loved you, and you did this to us. You loved the version of me that made you feel good about yourself. You never loved the real me, Catherine. If you had, you would have defended me. you would have believed me. You would have chosen me over Marcus at least once. He's my brother, and I was your husband. Was, Catherine. Past tense. We're over. The divorce? Process the papers. I'll sign whatever you want. Keep the house, the cars, all of it. I don't want anything from your family, except to watch us burn. I close my eyes. I don't want you to burn. I just want you to face consequences. There's a difference, Mom. She hung up. I sat in the dark apartment, feeling the weight of what I'd done settling on me like gravity. This was real now. Irreversible. Marcus was going to trial. The Whitmore family would never recover their reputation. Catherine and I would never speak again. I'd chosen truth over comfort, justice over love. I'd chosen correctly. So why did it hurt so much? My phone buzzed. An email from Marcus Green, the documentary filmmaker. Daniel, I've been researching the Whitmore family history. I found something you need to see. Can we meet tomorrow? MG. We met at a coffee shop in Goleta, far enough from downtown Santa Barbara that we were unlikely to be recognized. Green arrived with a laptop and a folder full of documents that looked like they'd been copied from microfilm. I've been digging through newspaper archives from the 1950s and 60s, he said, pulling up scanned articles. When Richard Whitmore's father, your father-in-law's father, was building the family fortune, he showed me article after article. Stories about tenant displacement, about urban renewal projects that had destroyed historically black neighborhoods to make way for Whitmore development projects. Stories about labor disputes where Whitmore companies had hired strikebreakers. Stories about suspicious rezoning decisions that had benefited Whitmore real estate holdings. This family has been doing this for 3 generations, Green said. Marcus didn't invent corruption. He inherited it. He just got caught. Why are you showing me this? Because the Whitmores want the public to think Marcus is an isolated bad actor. One rotten apple in an otherwise respectable family. But that's not true. The rot goes deep. It's structural. And if we're going to tell this story right, we need to tell all of it. I looked at the documents, saw names I recognized. Richard Whitmore, Catherine's grandfather, great uncles I'd met at family gatherings. All of them implicated in schemes that range from ethically questionable to potentially criminal. This will destroy them, I said. They've been destroying others for 70 years, Green replied. Maybe it's time someone returned the favor. I thought about Catherine, about Vivian's kindness, flawed as it was, about the parts of the Whitmore family that were genuinely good, or at least genuinely human. I don't want to destroy them, I said. I just wanted them to see me, to respect me. You're not destroying them, Daniel. You're just revealing what they actually are, what they've always been. The destruction is self-inflicted. I left the coffee shop with a copy of Green's research. That night, I read through it all. Every article, every document, every piece of evidence showing that the Whitmore family's wealth was built on a foundation of exploitation and corruption. And I made a decision. I called Green. Use it. Use all of it. Tell the whole story. You're sure? I'm sure if we're going to do this, we do it right. No half measures. No protecting people who don't deserve protection. This is going to get ugly, Green warned. It's already ugly. At least now it'll be honest. The next few weeks were a masterclass in how wealthy families fight back when cornered. The Whitmore family hired the best criminal defense attorney in California, a man named Stanford Reeves who'd successfully defended 3 different tech CEOs accused of fraud. They hired a crisis PR firm that specialized in reputation management for the ultra-wealthy. They hired private investigators to dig into my background, looking for anything they could use to discredit me. They found nothing because there was nothing to find. I'd lived a quiet, modest life. No scandals, no secrets, no skeletons in closets. So they created scandals. A story leaked to the tabloids that I'd had an affair during my marriage to Catherine. Completely false, but it didn't matter. The headline was enough. Whistleblower husband cheated on Whitmore heiress. Another story claimed I'd plagiarized designs from other architects. Also false. My firm provided documentation proving every project was original work. A third story suggested I had gambling debts and had married Catherine specifically to pay them off. Again, provably false. My financial records showed no unusual debts, but the stories kept coming. The strategy was clear. Throw enough mud, and some of it will stick. Make Daniel Cross seem unreliable, questionable, morally compromised. Make a jury doubt him before the trial even starts. Lisa Warren filed defamation suits against 3 different media outlets. We probably won't win, she admitted, but it sends a message. We're not going to let them lie about you without consequences. Meanwhile, the criminal case against Marcus moved forward. Stanford Reeves filed motions to suppress evidence, to dismiss charges, to delay the trial. Denied. The evidence was too solid, too well documented, too clearly obtained through legal means. A trial date was set, 8 months away. The federal prosecutor, a woman named Margaret Chen, no relation to Robert Chen, made it clear she was seeking the maximum sentence. Your brother-in-law facilitated tax evasion for 47 different clients, she told me during one of our preparation meetings. He helped them hide over $200 million in income. The tax revenue loss to the federal government is estimated at $70 million. That's $70 million that should have gone to schools, infrastructure, social programs. Instead, it went to offshore accounts. Can you prove all that? I asked. We can prove enough. Between your documentation, the testimony of some of Marcus's former clients who are cooperating for immunity, and our own forensic accounting, we have him dead to rights on at least 10 of the 17 counts. That's enough for 20 years minimum. 20 years. Marcus was 42. He'd be in his 60s when he got out. How do you feel about that? Chen asked, watching my face. I don't know, I said honestly. I wanted justice. I wanted accountability, but I didn't fully process what that would actually look like. A man I used to have holiday dinners with is going to spend the next 2 decades in federal prison. A man who stole from widows and nonprofits, Chen reminded me. Don't let sympathy cloud your judgment. Marcus Whitmore knew exactly what he was doing. He just thought he'd never get caught. She was right, but it still felt heavy. 3 months before the trial, something unexpected happened. I was at my drafting table working on the library designs when I heard a knock at my apartment door. I checked the peephole and saw a young woman I didn't recognize. Professional attire, nervous expression. Can I help you? I called through the door. Mr. Cross, my name is Rebecca Whitmore. I'm Marcus's daughter. I opened the door. Rebecca Whitmore was 23, a recent graduate from Stanford. I'd met her a few times at family gatherings. Quiet, studious, always seemed uncomfortable at the lavish Whitmore events. I'm sorry to show up unannounced, she said. I know this is strange, but I need to talk to you. I let her in, made tea. We sat in an awkward silence for a moment before she found her words. My father is going to prison, she said. Everyone knows it. His lawyers know it. My grandmother knows it. Even my father knows it, though he won't admit it. I'm sorry, I said, meaning it. Don't be. He did this to himself. She looked at me with eyes that were heartbreakingly clear. I need you to know something. I'm glad you exposed him. I hadn't expected that. My father is not a good man, Rebecca continued. He's never been a good man. He's charming and successful, and he says all the right things at parties, but he's rotten inside. I've known that since I was 12 years old. What happened when you were 12? I overheard him on the phone with a client, laughing about how they'd found a loophole to avoid paying taxes on a massive inheritance, joking about how the IRS was too stupid to catch them. I asked him about it later, asked if what he was doing was legal. He told me that legal and ethical are different things, and smart people know how to navigate that difference. She set down her teacup with shaking hands. That's when I realized my father doesn't care about right and wrong. He only cares about winning, about being smarter than everyone else, about getting away with things. Why are you telling me this? Because Aunt Catherine, your wife, I guess she's technically still your wife, she's been calling me, asking me to testify for the defense, to talk about what a good father Marcus is, how devoted to family, how this is all a misunderstanding. And I'm going to testify for the prosecution instead. I stared at her. Rebecca, that will destroy your relationship with your family. I know, but Mr. Cross, you testified. You risked everything to tell the truth. How can I do less? How can I stand up there and lie about who my father is just because he's blood? I thought about it. about family loyalty versus moral obligation, about the weight of truth-telling. It's going to be brutal, I said. Your family will hate you. They'll cut you off financially. They'll say terrible things about you. I know. You'll be alone. No, she said, meeting my eyes. I'll be honest. There's a difference. I recognized the look in her eyes. I'd seen it in the mirror for months now. The look of someone who'd decided that truth mattered more than comfort. Have you talked to the prosecution? I asked. Not yet. I wanted to talk to you first to see if, she hesitated, to see if you think I'm doing the right thing. I think you're doing an incredibly hard thing, I said carefully. Whether it's right depends on what you can live with. Can you live with testifying against your father? Yes. Can you live with not testifying, knowing what you know? No. Then you have your answer. She nodded, stood to leave. At the door, she turned back. Thank you for exposing him, she said. I know it cost you everything. Your marriage, your reputation, your peace. But you did it anyway. That takes courage. I'm not sure I have. You're here, aren't you? I pointed out. You're about to testify against your own father. I think you have plenty of courage. After she left, I called Margaret Chen and told her about the visit. She was practically vibrating with excitement. Marcus's own daughter? Testifying about his contempt for tax law? That's devastating. The defense's whole strategy is built on painting Marcus as a family man who made some technical mistakes. If his daughter says he's fundamentally corrupt, that narrative collapses. She's going to need protection, I said. The family will go after her. We'll take care of her. Witness protection if necessary. 2 weeks later, Rebecca Whitmore gave a deposition to federal prosecutors. The contents were sealed, but word leaked that it was damning. The defense team went into crisis mode. Catherine tried calling me again. I didn't answer, but she left a voicemail. You turned my niece against her own father. Her voice was ice. You poison everyone you touch, Daniel. I hope you're happy with yourself. I deleted the message. But that night, I sat in my apartment and wondered if she was right, if I was poisonous, if my insistence on truth-telling was just another form of destruction. Sarah texted me, You're not poisonous, you're honest. Some people can't tell the difference. How do you always know what I'm thinking? I replied. Because I've been there, second-guessing yourself, wondering if exposing corruption makes you the bad guy. It doesn't. It makes you the one person brave enough to turn on the lights. When can I meet you? After the trial. Once it's safe. Why isn't it safe now? Because the Whitmores are desperate, and desperate people are dangerous. I didn't understand what she meant until 2 days later. I was leaving the law office after a meeting with Lisa Warren when a car pulled up beside me. 2 men got out. Big guys, professional, not immediately threatening. Mr. Cross, we need you to come with us. I don't think so, I said, already backing away. It's not a request. One of them reached for my arm. I jerked back, yelling for help. The street was busy, people noticed, and the men retreated to their car and drove off. My hands were shaking. I called Lisa Warren immediately. They tried to grab you. She sounded alarmed. In broad daylight, 2 guys, professional, said I needed to come with them. Did you get a license plate? No, I was too busy trying not to get kidnapped. Okay, we're calling the police and the FBI. This is witness intimidation at minimum, possibly attempted kidnapping. The Whitmores just made a huge mistake. The FBI took it seriously. Agent Valdez assigned protective detail to me, an agent who would accompany me places, check my apartment for threats, monitor anyone who approached me. The Whitmores are scared, Valdez said. The trial is 2 months away. Rebecca's testimony is going to destroy their defense. They're looking for any way to prevent that. By kidnapping me? Maybe, or by scaring you into recanting, or just getting you out of the picture temporarily so they can pressure Rebecca without you supporting her. This is insane. This is what happens when wealthy people face real consequences for the first time in their lives. They can't bribe their way out, can't charm their way out, can't buy their way out. So they resort to intimidation. The attempted kidnapping made national news. Whitmore family accused of witness intimidation. The optics were terrible for them. Stanford Reeves, Marcus's defense attorney, had to hold a press conference denying any involvement. My client had nothing to do with this incident, Reeves said. This is clearly a false flag operation designed to prejudice the jury against Mr. Whitmore before trial. Nobody believed him. The judge overseeing the criminal trial called an emergency hearing and issued a stern warning. Any further attempts to intimidate witnesses would result in additional charges and could affect sentencing. Marcus's bail conditions were tightened. He was placed under house arrest, his communications monitored, and the trial date approached. The trial of Marcus Whitmore began on a Monday in October in a federal courthouse in Los Angeles. I sat in the gallery surrounded by reporters, curious spectators, and a few people I recognized from Robert Chen's client list. Victims who wanted to see Marcus face justice. The jury had been selected the week before. 7 women, 5 men, a mix of ages and backgrounds. The judge, a no-nonsense woman named Sandra Morrison, who'd been on the bench for 20 years, made it clear she wouldn't tolerate theatrics. This is a criminal trial, she told the packed courtroom, not entertainment. Anyone disrupting these proceedings will be removed. That includes the press. Marcus sat at the defense table in a perfectly tailored suit, looking calm and confident. Stanford Reeves had clearly coached him well, appear composed, reasonable, like a man who had nothing to hide. Catherine sat behind him in the family section, along with Richard and Vivian. They all looked smaller somehow, diminished, like furniture removed from a grand house and placed in a regular room, suddenly ordinary. Margaret Chen delivered the opening statement for the prosecution. She was methodical, building the case piece by piece. She explained offshore accounts and shell companies. She showed the jury documents proving Marcus had helped clients hide income. She outlined the conspiracy with specific names, dates, amounts. The evidence will show, Chen said, looking directly at Fajermi, that Marcus Whitmore operated a sophisticated criminal enterprise for over a decade. He didn't make mistakes. He didn't misinterpret tax law. He deliberately, systematically helped wealthy clients evade their legal obligations, and he profited enormously from doing so. Stanford Reeves's opening statement took a different approach. He portrayed Marcus as a talented consultant who'd operated in good faith, relying on advice from accountants and tax attorneys. He painted the offshore accounts as legitimate tax planning, aggressive perhaps, but not illegal. The prosecution wants you to believe my client is a criminal mastermind, Reeves said, his voice dripping with skepticism. But the evidence will show he's just a man who helped clients navigate our incredibly complex tax code. He made some judgments that, in hindsight, appear questionable. But questionable is not criminal. Aggressive is not fraudulent. And you cannot convict a man based on the fact that the government disagrees with his interpretation of tax law. It was a good strategy. Create reasonable doubt. Make the jury think maybe this was all just a matter of different interpretations. Then the prosecution started calling witnesses. The first week was mostly financial experts and IRS agents, explaining how the schemes worked, how money was hidden, how the paper trail proved deliberate deception rather than honest mistakes. It was dry testimony, technical and detailed. I could see some jurors struggling to stay engaged. But then Robert Chen's clients took the stand. Maria Santos, the elderly woman who'd lost her retirement savings. She testified about how Marcus had promised to help her invest her late husband's life insurance policy. How he'd steered her into a complex offshore investment that lost 80% of its value. How when she'd questioned the losses, Marcus had shown her fraudulent statements, making it seem like everything was fine. I trusted him, she said, crying on the stand. He seemed so professional, so knowledgeable. I had no idea he was stealing from me. Reeves tried to cross-examine to suggest she'd misunderstood the risks of investing, but her testimony was devastating. You could see it on the jurors' faces. This wasn't abstract tax evasion. This was a real person who'd been hurt. Then came David Park, the nonprofit director whose scholarship fund had been decimated. He explained how Marcus had convinced the board to let Meridian Consulting manage their endowment, how Marcus had taken enormous fees while the endowment lost value, how when the board had questioned the performance, Marcus had provided doctored statements. We had $12 million, Park testified. We were going to send 200 students to college over the next decade. Because of what Marcus Whitmore did, We can now send maybe 70 students. That's 130 lives changed, 130 futures stolen. The defense tried to argue that market downturns weren't Marcus's fault, that investment losses happen. But the jury wasn't buying it. Not when the documents showed Marcus had taken millions in fees while the nonprofit's assets evaporated. By the end of the second week, the prosecution had established a clear pattern. Marcus Whitmore preyed on people who trusted him. He made complex promises, provided fraudulent documentation, and profited while his clients lost everything. Then it was my turn to testify. I'd been preparing for this for months. Margaret Chen had walked me through every question, every potential attack from the defense. But sitting in that witness box, looking at Marcus, at Catherine, at the jury, it was surreal. Chen started with easy questions. My name, my profession, how I knew Marcus. I married his sister, I said. I was part of the Whitmore family for 7 years. And during that time, did you have access to family financial information? Yes. Catherine gave me passwords to their shared cloud storage. I was working on some architectural projects for family properties, and I needed access to property documents. And what did you find in that cloud storage? Initially, just property files, but I'm trained to notice patterns, inconsistencies in structures. I started noticing files related to Marcus's business that didn't make sense. I described my investigation, how I'd compiled evidence, how I'd stored it for years without using it. Why didn't you report what you'd found to authorities immediately? Chen asked. Because I love my wife, because I didn't want to destroy her family, because I kept hoping I was wrong, that there was some legitimate explanation I wasn't seeing. What changed? At a family dinner, Marcus humiliated me. He called my marriage a fraud, said I'd married Catherine for money. My wife didn't defend me. Instead, she told me to apologize to Marcus or leave. And I realized in that moment that I'd spent 7 years making myself small for people who would never respect me. I'd protected them when they didn't deserve protection. Chen nodded. So you threatened to expose the evidence? Yes, though I didn't know at the time that someone else had already sent it to the IRS. Did you fabricate any of this evidence? No, every document is authentic, every email is real, every bank statement is genuine. Did you have any financial motive for exposing Marcus Whitmore? None. I asked for nothing in the divorce. I kept nothing from the Whitmore family. I'm living in a 1-bedroom apartment on my architect's salary. Chen showed the jury key documents. Emails where Marcus explicitly discussed helping clients minimize tax exposure through offshore structures. Bank statements showing millions flowing through Cayman accounts. Spreadsheets tracking client payments for tax optimization services. In your professional opinion, as someone trained to analyze complex structures, Chen asked, do these documents show a pattern of tax evasion? Objection, Reeves called. Mr. Cross is not a tax expert. Sustained, Judge Morrison said. Mr. Cross, please limit your testimony to what you observed, not your legal interpretations. Chen pivoted smoothly. Let me rephrase. Mr. Cross, did Marcus Whitmore ever discuss the legality of these offshore accounts with you? Once, at a family dinner, someone asked about his consulting work. Marcus joked that his job was to help clients stay one step ahead of the IRS. Everyone laughed, but I noticed Catherine's mother looked uncomfortable. It was a small detail, but effective. It showed Marcus's casual contempt for tax law. Then it was Stanford Reeves's turn to cross-examine me. He stood up slowly, buttoning his suit jacket, projecting confidence. Mr. Cross, you've testified that you loved your wife. Is that correct? Yes. But you spied on her family for 2 years? I didn't spy. I accessed files I had legitimate permission to access. Did you tell Catherine you were compiling evidence against her brother? No. Did you tell her you were planning to destroy her family's reputation? I wasn't planning to destroy anything. I was trying to understand. Please, you answer yes or no. Did you tell your wife what you were doing? No. So you deceived her. I stopped. He was right. I had deceived her. Yes, Reeves smiled. You've also testified that you asked for nothing in the divorce. Why is that? Because I didn't marry Catherine for money. But you did live quite comfortably during your marriage, didn't you? A house in Montecito worth $3 million? A luxury car? Expensive vacations? Catherine provided those things. I never asked for them. But you accepted them. Yes. You enjoyed them. I suppose I did. So when Marcus Whitmore suggested at that dinner that you'd married his sister for her wealth, he touched a nerve, didn't he? Because part of you wondered if he was right. Objection, Chen called. Speculation. Withdrawn, Reeves had said smoothly. Mr. Cross, isn't it true that you were angry at the Whitmore family? That you felt disrespected? That you wanted revenge? I wanted them to see me as an equal. I wanted, yes or no, please. Did you want revenge? I thought about lying. About saying no, I only wanted justice. I was motivated purely by concern for Marcus's victims. But I'd come this far on truth. I wasn't going to start lying now. Yes, I said, part of me wanted revenge. You could hear the shift in the courtroom. The defense had scored a point. So this whole prosecution, Reeves said, is based on evidence compiled by a man who admits he wanted revenge on the family that took him in, supported him, and gave him a lifestyle he could never have afforded on his own? Objection! Chen was on her feet. Argumentative. Mischaracterizes the witness's testimony. Sustained, Judge Morrison said. Mr. Reeves, ask questions. Don't make speeches. But the damage was done. Reeves had planted the seed. Daniel Cross was a vindictive ex-husband who couldn't be trusted. One more question, Mr. Cross. You've testified about these documents, these emails, these bank statements, but you accessed all of them through your wife's cloud account, correct? Yes. An account she gave you access to for a specific purpose, architectural work on family properties? Yes. So you violated her trust. You used access she gave you in good faith to spy on her family. I found evidence of crimes. Yes or no? Did you violate her trust? I met his eyes. Yes. No further questions. I left the stand feeling like I'd been gutted. Chen tried to reassure me during the lunch break. You did fine, yes. Reeves scored some points, but you were honest. Jurors appreciate honesty, and nothing you said changes the fact that the evidence is real and the crimes are real. But I'd seen the jurors' faces. Some of them were looking at me differently now, not as a brave whistleblower, but as a scorned husband with an axe to grind. The trial continued. The prosecution called more witnesses, forensic accountants who'd traced the money flows, former Marcus clients who'd cooperated for immunity and testified about how the schemes worked. The defense called character witnesses who testified about Marcus's philanthropy, his devotion to family, his reputation in the business community. They called tax attorneys who argued that aggressive tax planning wasn't the same as evasion. It was all very civilized, very professional, and then Rebecca Whitmore took the stand. The courtroom went silent when she was sworn in. Catherine looked like she'd been slapped. Vivian actually gasped. Marcus's face went carefully blank. Margaret Chen approached the witness stand gently. Ms. Whitmore, how are you related to the defendant? He's my father. This must be very difficult for you. It is. Why did you decide to testify? Rebecca looked at her father. Because someone needs to tell the truth about who he is. Reeves objected. Relevance. But Judge Morrison allowed it. Tell us about your relationship with your father, Chen prompted. Rebecca described a childhood of privilege and neglect. A father who was always traveling, always working, always more interested in making money than being present. A father who taught her that winning was everything, that rules were for other people, that being smarter than everyone else was the only thing that mattered. When I was 12, Rebecca said, I overheard him on a phone call. He was laughing about helping a client hide money from the IRS. I asked him about it later. He said that smart people know the difference between legal and ethical, and they choose whichever one benefits them most. Objection! Reeves was on his feet. Hearsay. This alleged conversation cannot be verified. Your Honor, Chen responded, this is testimony about the defendant's state of mind. It goes to establishing a pattern of intentional deception rather than innocent mistakes. Judge Morrison thought about it. I'll allow it. But Ms. Whitmore, please limit your testimony to conversations you personally participated in. Rebecca nodded. She described other conversations. Times when Marcus had bragged about tax optimization strategies that were clearly illegal. Times when he dismissed concerns about legality with a wave of his hand. My father doesn't make mistakes, Rebecca said. He makes choices. And he chose to break the law because he believed he was too smart to get caught. Reeves's cross-examination was brutal. He attacked her motives, suggested she was estranged from her father for personal reasons, implied she was testifying out of spite. Isn't it true that you and your father had a falling out last year over your choice of career? Reeves asked. We disagreed about some things, yes. He wanted you to join the family business, and you refused. I didn't want to work for a company that helps people evade taxes. So you're angry at him. I'm disappointed in him. There's a difference, tutabam. Disappointed enough to send your own father to prison? Rebecca's voice didn't waver. Disappointed enough to tell the truth, regardless of consequences. It was the most powerful moment of the trials. A daughter testifying against her father, not out of spite, but out of moral conviction. You could see it affecting the jury. The defense rested their case 2 days later. Closing arguments were scheduled for the following Monday. That weekend, I received a package at my apartment, no return address. Inside was a burner phone with a single contact saved, S. I called it. Sarah? Daniel, we need to meet. There's something you need to know before closing arguments. What? Not over the phone. Tomorrow night, 7 p.m. There's a park in Carpinteria near the beach. I'll be at the north entrance. Are you safe? For now, but the Whitmores know I'm the one who sent the original evidence. They're looking for me. Then why risk meeting? Because you need to know the whole truth. About Marcus, about the family, about why I did what I did. She hung up before I could ask more questions. I told Agent Valdez about the meeting. She insisted on sending backup. Agents would be nearby, watching, ready to intervene if anything went wrong. Sarah Edmonds is either a key witness or a potential threat, Valdez said. We need to know which. Sunday evening, I drove to Carpinteria. The park was quiet, mostly empty, except for a few families packing up from beach visits. The sun was setting, painting everything in shades of orange and gold. I waited at the north entrance. At exactly 7 p.m., a woman approached. Early 30s, dark hair pulled back, wearing jeans and a simple jacket. She looked tired, scared, but determined. Daniel Cross, she said. It wasn't a question. Sarah Edmonds. We shook hands. Hers was cold despite the warm evening. Thank you for meeting me, as she said. I know this is strange. I know you have questions. But first, I need you to understand something. Everything I did, sending the evidence, hiring Lisa Warren to represent you, watching out for you, I did it because I know what it's like to be destroyed by the Whitmore family. And I couldn't let it happen to someone else. What did they do to you? She looked out at the ocean. I worked for Marcus for 3 years. I was good at my arm, efficient, discreet, loyal. I knew about the offshore accounts, the tax schemes, all of it. But I told myself it wasn't my place to judge. My job was to facilitate, not evaluate. What changed? I fell in love with someone. Another employee, a junior accountant named Thomas Chen. We kept it quiet. Office relationships were discouraged. We were happy. Planning a future together. Her voice cracked slightly. Thomas started noticing the same things you notice. Inconsistencies, illegal activity. He came to me, asked me to help him document it. I refused. I told him to leave it alone, that Marcus was powerful and would destroy anyone who crossed him. But Thomas didn't leave it alone. No, he compiled evidence, just like you did. He was going to report it to the IRS. He told me the night before he planned to do it. She turned to face me, and I saw tears in her eyes. The next morning, Thomas was killed in a car accident. Single vehicle crash on Pacific Coast Highway. His brakes failed. The police ruled it an accident. My blood went cold. You think Marcus? I know Marcus. That same week he gave me a raise, a significant raise. And he said something I'll never forget. Sarah, you're so valuable to me. I'd hate to lose you the way we lost poor Thomas. Tragic what happened. A reminder that life is fragile and we should all be careful. That's a threat. That's a murder confession disguised as condolence. She wiped her eyes. I didn't go to the police. I was terrified. Instead, I quit, disappeared, changed my name, started over. And I've been living in fear for 3 years that Marcus would decide I knew too much. But you sent the evidence anyway. Because when I saw you compiling the same kind of documentation Thomas had compiled, I knew Marcus would kill you too. Maybe not immediately, but eventually, as soon as you became a threat. So I forced the issue. I sent the evidence before you could. That way, Marcus couldn't make you disappear quietly. You'd already be a public figure, a known whistleblower. Killing you would be too obvious. I sat down on a bench processing this. Thomas Chen, I said. Robert Chen, the attorney representing Marcus's victims. His brother. Robert's been trying to prove Marcus killed Thomas for 3 years. He can't. There's no physical evidence, just suspicions. But when I sent him information about your case, about Marcus's victims, he saw a chance to get justice for Thomas indirectly. Does he know we're meeting? No, nobody knows. I shouldn't even be here. But you need to know what you're dealing with. Marcus Whitmore isn't just a white-collar criminal. He's a murderer. And if the jury finds him not guilty, if he walks free, he will come after everyone who testified against him. You, Rebecca, me, if he finds me. What do you want me to do? I want you to make sure the prosecution knows about Thomas. I have documents, emails between Marcus and a private investigator, financial records showing payments for automotive consultation the week before Thomas died. It's not conclusive proof, but it's enough to establish pattern of behavior, enough to argue for maximum sentencing. She handed me a flash drive. Everything's on here. Give it to Margaret Chen. Let her decide if it's usable. I pocketed the flash drive. Where will you go? Somewhere Marcus can't find me. I've been preparing for 3 years. New identity, offshore accounts of my own, contacts in countries without extradition treaties. If he's convicted, I'll come back. If he's acquitted, she shrugged, I'll disappear permanently. Sarah, don't. She held up a hand. Don't thank me. Don't promise to protect me. Don't make this into something noble. I'm not a hero, Daniel. I'm a coward who let the man I love die because I was too scared to help him. Everything I've done for you is just me trying to atone for that. That's not cowardice, that's survival. Maybe, but it doesn't feel like it. She stood to leave. One more thing. Catherine came to see me about a month before you exposed Marcus. What? She tracked me down somehow, came to where I was working under my new name. She knew who I really was, and she asked me, begged me to tell her if her brother was really as bad as she suspected. What did you tell her? I told her the truth, that Marcus was a criminal and probably a murderer, that she needed to protect herself and get away from him. What did she say? She said, he's my brother. I can't abandon him. Then she left. Sarah smiled sadly. So you see, Daniel, Catherine chose Marcus over you long before that dinner. She chose him over the truth, over justice, over her own safety. She'll always choose family over what's right. That's who she is. Sarah started walking toward the parking lot. I called after her. Will I see you again? She turned back, silhouetted against the sunset. If Marcus goes to prison, yes. If he doesn't, no. Either way, take care of yourself, Daniel. You're one of the good ones. Don't let this destroy you. Then she was gone. I sat on that bench for another hour holding the flash drive, watching the sun disappear into the ocean. Thinking about Thomas Chen, killed for trying to do the right thing. Thinking about Sarah, living in fear for 3 years. Thinking about Catherine, who'd known the truth and chosen to ignore it. Finally, I called Margaret Chen. We need to talk, I said. I have new evidence. Margaret Chen met me at a secure location, the Federal Building, after hours with Agent Valdez present. I handed over Sarah's flash drive and explained everything. Chen went pale as she reviewed the documents. If this is authentic, this suggests Marcus Whitmore may have ordered a hit on a potential whistleblower. Can you use it in the trial? I asked. No, it's too late for new evidence. Closing arguments are tomorrow. And honestly, it's not conclusive enough for a murder charge. Suspicious payments to a PI, yes, but no direct proof of foul play. She tapped the flash drive against her palm. However, I can use it in sentencing recommendations. If the jury convicts, I can argue to the judge that Marcus represents an ongoing danger to witnesses and victims. That could add years to his sentence. And if the jury doesn't convict, then we have a bigger problem. Because if Marcus walks free, everyone who testified against him is in danger. The next morning, closing arguments began. Stanford Reeves went first. He was eloquent, persuasive, masterful. He painted Marcus as a victim of government overreach, a talented consultant who'd been targeted because wealthy people make easy scapegoats. The prosecution wants you to believe my client is a criminal mastermind, Reeves told the jury. But what have they really proven? That Marcus Whitmore used offshore accounts? Many people do. It's legal. That he gave financial advice some people disagreed with? That's not a crime. That he charged fees for his services? That's capitalism, not fraud. He attacked my credibility. The government's star witness is a man who admits he wanted revenge, a man who violated his wife's trust to spy on her family, a man who compiled this evidence not out of concern for victims, but out of wounded pride. He attacked Rebecca's testimony, a troubled young woman with a complicated relationship with her father. She admits they argued about her career choices. Is it any surprise she'd take this opportunity to hurt him? He attacked the victim testimony. These people made investment decisions. Investments carry risk. The fact that some investments lost money doesn't make Marcus Whitmore a criminal. It makes him a financial advisor whose recommendations didn't always pan out. It was effective. I could see some jurors nodding. Then Margaret Chen stood for the prosecution's closing. She was quieter than Reeves, more methodical. But every word carried weight. Ladies and gentlemen, this case is not complicated. The defendant created shell companies to hide income. He lied to the IRS about the existence of offshore accounts. He provided fraudulent financial statements to clients. These are facts documented in hundreds of pages of evidence. She walked the jury through the key documents. Emails where Marcus explicitly discussed evading taxes. Bank statements showing hidden income. False tax returns. The defense wants you to focus on the witness's motives. Daniel Cross wanted revenge. So what? That doesn't make the documents fake. Rebecca Whitmore has a complicated relationship with her father. So what? That doesn't make her testimony about his contempt for tax law untrue. She addressed the victim testimony. Maria Santos didn't lose money because of market conditions. She lost money because Marcus Whitmore stole it from her through fraudulent investments and hid the theft with fake statements. David Park's nonprofit didn't suffer normal investment losses. It was systematically defrauded while Marcus collected enormous fees. Chen's voice rose slightly. The defense talks about reasonable doubt. Let me tell you what's not reasonable. Believing that all these documents are fabricated, that all these witnesses are lying, that Marcus Whitmore, despite overwhelming evidence to the contrary, is just an innocent financial advisor who got caught in government crosshairs. You know the truth. You've seen the evidence. Marcus Whitmore committed 17 separate crimes. He did it deliberately, systematically, without remorse. And now it's time for him to face consequences. She sat down. Judge Morrison instructed the jury, explained the charges, the burden of proof, the definitions of reasonable doubt. Then the jury was escorted out to begin deliberations. And we waited. Catherine left the courthouse immediately, flanked by her parents. She didn't look at me, didn't acknowledge my existence. I sat in the hallway with Robert Chen and some of his clients. We didn't talk much, just waited. Rebecca sat alone on a bench at the far end of the hallway. I walked over. That took courage, I said. What you did? It took too long, she replied. I've known who my father is for years. I should have spoken up sooner. You spoke up when it mattered. She looked at me with those heartbreakingly clear eyes. Do you think they'll convict him? I don't know. The evidence is strong, but juries are unpredictable. If they don't, if he goes free, he'll destroy us. You, me, everyone who testified. You know that, right? I know. Are you scared? Terrified, I admitted. But I'd be more scared of staying silent, of letting him keep hurting people. She nodded. Me too. The jury deliberated for 3 days. 3 days of waiting, of second-guessing, of imagining all the ways this could go wrong. 3 days of reporters asking for comments, of legal experts on TV analyzing the case, of online speculation about the verdict. On the third day, word came. The jury had reached a verdict. We assembled in the courtroom. Marcus looked composed, but I could see tension in the set of his shoulders. Catherine sat behind him, gripping her mother's hand. The jury filed in. I tried to read their faces, but they were carefully neutral. Judge Morrison addressed the foreperson. Has the jury reached a verdict? We have, Your Honor. Please hand the verdict form to the bailiff. The bailiff delivered the form to Judge Morrison. She read it, her expression revealing nothing, then handed it back to the foreperson. The defendant will please rise. Marcus stood, Reeves Tadaud beside him. On count 1, tax evasion, how do you find? Guilty. Catherine made a sound like she'd been hit. On count 2, money laundering, how do you find? Guilty. On count 3, conspiracy to commit fraud, how do you find? Guilty. 17 counts. Guilty on all 17. Marcus swayed slightly. Reeves put a hand on his shoulder to steady him. Vivian was crying. Richard's face had gone red. Catherine looked like she was in shock. Judge Morrison thanked the jury and scheduled sentencing for 3 weeks later. As the courtroom emptied, I saw Catherine approaching me. For a moment, I thought she might slap me. Instead, she just looked at me with empty eyes. I hope you're happy, she said. I'm not, I replied honestly. This didn't make me happy. It just made me free. Free, she laughed bitterly. You destroyed my family and call it freedom. Your family destroyed themselves. I just stopped enabling the cover-up. She walked away without another word. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. I gave a brief statement that Amanda Chen had prepared. Justice was served today. I hope this verdict sends a message that no one is above the law, regardless of wealth or family name. Then I left. Drove back to Santa Barbara. Sat in my small apartment and tried to process what had happened. Marcus Whitmore, the golden child, the man who'd humiliated me at that dinner 7 months ago, was going to federal prison. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You did it. Thank you. Another text from Rebecca. Thank you for giving me the courage to tell the truth. Another from Robert Chen. Thomas would be proud. And one more from Agent Valdez. Congratulations. You're officially the bravest person I've ever met. I read the messages, set down my phone, and cried. Not tears of joy, not tears of vindication, just release. Pure, exhausted release. 3 weeks later, I returned to the courthouse for sentencing. Margaret Chen had filed her recommendations with the court, including information from Sarah's flash drive about Thomas Chen's death and Marcus's potential involvement. Reeves had filed counter-recommendations asking for leniency, pointing to Marcus's lack of prior criminal record and his contributions to charity. Judge Morrison listened to both sides. Then she asked if Marcus wished to make a statement before sentencing. Marcus stood. For the first time since I'd known him, he looked small. Your Honor, I want to say that I take full responsibility for my actions. I made mistakes. I got caught up in the game of making money, of being successful, of proving I was the smartest person in the room. I lost sight of what mattered. It was clearly a prepared statement, designed to show remorse, but I could hear the hollowness in it. Marcus didn't feel remorse. He felt regret at getting caught. Judge Morrison saw through it too. Mr. Whitmore, you've been convicted of 17 felonies. You systematically defrauded the government and your own clients over a period of more than 10 years. The evidence suggests you stole more than $70 million in unpaid taxes and client funds. You showed no remorse until you were caught, and even now your statement rings false. She looked at the sentencing guidelines in front of her. More concerning are allegations that you may have been involved in the death of Thomas Chen, a potential whistleblower. While the evidence is insufficient for criminal charges, it establishes a pattern of witness intimidation that cannot be ignored. Catherine was crying again. Marcus stood perfectly still. Therefore, Judge Morrison continued, I'm sentencing you to 28 years in federal prison to be served consecutively. You'll be eligible for parole after 20 years, provided you demonstrate genuine rehabilitation. 28 years. Marcus was 42. He'd be 70 before he had any chance of freedom. Reeves immediately announced they'd appeal. Catherine collapsed into her father's arms. Richard Whitmore, for the first time since I'd known him, looked old. As they led Marcus away in handcuffs, he looked at me. Not with anger, not with hate, with recognition. As if he finally understood that I hadn't been the harmless nobody he could dismiss. That underestimating me had been his fatal mistake. Outside the courthouse, I gave another brief statement. Then I went home. The next morning, I received divorce papers. Catherine was no longer contesting anything. She just wanted it over. I signed them. 7 years of marriage ended with a signature. The library opened in April. I stood at the ribbon-cutting ceremony, watching the mayor make a speech about public spaces and community investment and the importance of accessible architecture. My design had been executed beautifully. Open floor plans, natural light flooding through carefully placed windows, spaces that invited people in rather than intimidating them. It was the first project I'd worked on that felt completely mine. After the ceremony, I walked through the building, watching people explore. Children in the reading nooks, teenagers at computer stations, elderly folks browsing the large print section. The diversity of people using this space, that was what made it matter. Beautiful work. I turned. Sarah Edmonds stood behind me, smiling. She looked different, lighter somehow, free of the fear I'd seen in Carpinteria. You came back, I said. I promised I would if Marcus went to prison. She looked around the library. This is wonderful, Daniel. This is what you were meant to do. Thank you for everything. I didn't do it for thanks. I did it because it needed doing. We walked through the library together, talking. She told me about her life in hiding, the relief of knowing Marcus was locked away, the slow process of reclaiming her identity. Robert Chen has been helping me, she said. He's filing a civil suit against Marcus's estate on behalf of Thomas's family, wrongful death. We probably won't win, but it feels important to try. How's Rebecca? I asked. Thriving, actually. She's working for a nonprofit that does tax advocacy for low-income families. Turns out having insider knowledge of how rich people cheat the system makes her very effective at preventing it. I smiled. Good for her. And you? How are you really? I thought about it. I'm okay. Some days are harder than others. I still think about Catherine sometimes. Still miss parts of what we had. But I'm building a life that's mine. Work I care about. Relationships based on honesty rather than what I can provide. It's smaller than my life with the Whitmores, but it's real. Smaller can be better, Sarah said. Smaller is often more honest. We exchanged contact information. Made plans to have coffee. She was staying in California, ready to testify in the civil suit. As I left the library that evening, I saw Marcus Green filming B-roll for his documentary. It would be released next month, a comprehensive examination of the Whitmore family's history of corruption, with my story as the entry point. I'd seen an advance cut. It was brutal and fair in equal measure. It would destroy what remained of the Whitmore reputation. Part of me still felt guilty about that. The rest of me knew it was necessary. That night, I sat on my apartment balcony, drinking Earl Grey tea, looking at the city lights. My phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. Daniel, this is Catherine. I know I have no right to contact you. I know you owe me nothing. But I need to tell you something. You were right. About Marcus, about my family, about all of it. I spent my whole life pretending not to see what was in front of me, and it cost me everything. My marriage, my illusions, my certainty about who I was. I'm sorry for how I treated you, for not defending you, for choosing my family's reputation over the truth. You deserve better. See, I read the message 3 times. Part of me wanted to respond with anger, with "I told you so" satisfaction, with all the resentment I'd accumulated over 7 years of being made to feel lesser. Instead, I wrote, "Thank you for saying that. I hope you find peace." Then I blocked the number, not out of cruelty, out of self-preservation. Catherine was part of my past, a chapter that had taught me essential lessons about self-worth, about the difference between love and respect, about the cost of making yourself small for people who will never appreciate the sacrifice. But it was a chapter I'd closed. My future was unwritten, uncertain, smaller and quieter than the life I'd had with the Whitmores. But it was mine, completely authentically mine. And that, I was learning, was worth more than all the Montecito estates and expensive cars and family connections in the world. The next morning, I started work on a new project, a community center in a low-income neighborhood. The pay was modest, the timeline was tight, the client couldn't afford fancy finishes. I loved it because it mattered, because it would help people, because every line I drew, every space I designed, every decision I made was in service of creating something that made the world slightly better. This was who I was meant to be all along, not the man who married a Whitmore, not the whistleblower who exposed corruption. Just Daniel Cross, architect, builder of spaces that welcome everyone. A man who'd learned finally that sometimes the only way to build something real is to first burn down the elaborate fiction you've been living in. The fire had hurt, the smoke had choked me, the loss had nearly destroyed me. But I'd walked through it, and on the other side, I'd found myself. 3 years later, I received a letter. It was from Marcus, forwarded through his attorney. I almost threw it away without reading it. But curiosity won. Daniel, I know you have no reason to read this. You probably hate me. You should hate me. I've spent 3 years in federal prison thinking about what I did, who I became, the people I hurt. I was wrong about you. At that dinner, when I called your marriage a fraud, when I mocked you for not being one of us, I was projecting my own insecurities. You were everything I pretended to be, but wasn't. Honest, principled, genuinely talented at something meaningful. I spent my life proving I was the smartest person in the room, and I was so focused on being smart that I forgot to be good. I destroyed lives. I broke laws. I probably got a man killed, though I'll never admit that outside this letter. You stopped me. I hate you for it. I thank you for it. Both things are true. My sister still won't speak to me. My daughter visits once a year, and only to tell me she's disappointed. My parents are elderly and broken. I did that. Not you, me. I have 17 more years here. Maybe 20 if I don't make parole. I'll be an old man when I get out. If I get out, I wanted you to know that I understand now what you were trying to tell me that night, that the truth matters, that people matter more than profit. That being the smartest person in the room is worthless if you use that intelligence to hurt others. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know you were right. You were right about everything. Marcus. I folded the letter carefully, put it in a drawer. I didn't respond because Marcus didn't need my forgiveness. He needed to live with what he'd done, and I didn't need his admission that I'd been right. I'd stopped needing validation from the Whitmores the moment I walked out of that dinner. The truth had been its own vindication. I went back to my drafting table, back to the community center design, back to the work that actually mattered. Outside my window, the sun was setting over Santa Barbara. The city lights were starting to twinkle on. The world kept turning, indifferent to family dramas and prison sentences and the small, quiet triumphs of men who chose honesty over comfort. And in my small apartment, surrounded by the work I loved, living a life that was entirely my own, I was finally, completely at peace. The silence I'd created that night at the Whitmore dinner, the silence that had followed my one devastating sentence, had shattered their perfect life, but it had also freed mine. And in the end, that was the only thing that mattered.